All right, so I figured I'd start out with a clean space, honestly, just to start out and share the 10 new colors of alcohol ink with Ranger. And I love these colors because the palette is pretty substantial. We are up to 85 colors of alcohol ink now in the palettes. Through the years, some colors have permanently retired. This year, we brought back one of the retired colors, which is Juniper, probably the most asked about, requested retired color we've ever done. So wanted to bring that back, and I'm really excited about that. The thing about alcohol ink especially, it is a flammable ink. It is a solvent-based ink, so it's very different than everything else that maybe you've explored if you're truly into stamping inks and distress and sprays. This is a completely different animal when we're working with it. Also, to the chemists at Ranger, when it comes to making alcohol ink, they can't use the same dyes and colorants that we use on all of our other water-based products. They have to be solvent-stable inks. And through the years, a lot of manufacturers have come and gone, and that's also a challenge to keep so many colors going in the line, because as dyes or certain materials become discontinued from the supplier, Ranger has to figure out an alternative and replacement to keep things going. So I'm so grateful for this palette really going strong at 85 colors. We also have alcohol pearls. And alcohol pearls, there are 18 colors of alcohol pearls. There are also alloys and metallic mixatives that we'll get into that. There's like 13 between those. So there's a lot of stuff in this line, and I don't want you to feel that you need all of it. It is one of those things that if alcohol ink is your jam, you're going to want all of them because they all do very different things as far as colors and breakdown. But you can really do a lot with a little when it comes to this particular medium. So our new colors, just to quickly reintroduce them, these were launched on Monday of this week. They're available worldwide. Just know that if you live a little farther, this is a product that cannot be air freighted. So a lot of times it will go on ocean container to different areas in the world. So we start with Cosmopolitan. That's a beautiful pink, and I'm going to compare it to the swatches in just a minute. We also have Brick. Was that inspired by Fired Brick Distress? I would say that it is. Juniper. We have Wilderness. Would you say that that's inspired by Rustic Wilderness? Well, yes, I would. So there are some colors that were inspired by the palette of Distress when I had the opportunity to do new colors because I love it. Bayou, probably one of my favorites, this wonderful blue. Yonder, bright blue. Was it inspired by Prize Ribbon? Yes. Chronicle, I saw a comment on social about this particular color, and Chronicle, it was inspired by Old Paper Distress. It is just that weird color that's got a little bit of green, a little bit of beige, a little bit of goodness in there. But although I love Bayou, and I love all these colors, because let's face it, I'm not going to do colors that I don't love. But this one, I have to say a shout out to Alan, who's one of the owners at Ranger, because initially the plan was to do 9 colors. But when I was sampling colors, the chemist came up with this version as we were trying to get into this arena. And I loved it so much, I was like, can we do this color? This color was literally done 2 weeks prior to launch. Now, these have already been done. These were done months ago. But this color, because I wanted it so bad, that means they had to get a label done. They had to get the raw materials. I mean, so the whole team at Ranger like really busted it out to get this color. This color is called Smudge. And I wanted it so bad. And so really, thank you, Alan, for saying yes. Because I'm like, he goes, it's 2 weeks. And this was, I think, over 4th of July weekend. He goes, you know, the label factory is closed. I don't know how we're going to do it for production. I'm like, it's just that important of a color. It is like this magic grunge color. So if you were looking to grunge up things really quick, like a metal charm or just a background, Smudge is it. It used to be Mushroom. I still love Mushroom, and I'll demo Mushroom today, but really Smudge is everything. Then we have Flannel, a beautiful gray, and Gravel, which is kind of this darkish gray almost as we go into black. So these 10 inks, these are available open stock, meaning you can buy these colors individually, but they're also done in kits. Through the years of Alcohol Ink, we have launched colors in these 3-pack kits. You see these in a lot of retail stores. So just know that when it comes to the new colors, there are 3 new kits that these colors come in. The only color that does not come in one of these kits, any guesses? Yeah, that's right. That would be Smudge, because 3, 6, 9. This is the 10th color. And he's like, it won't be in a kit. I'm like, who cares? I just want Smudge. So just know that if you're purchasing the kits and you're looking for Smudge, Smudge is not in one of these 3-packs. It is only open stock. So there we go. We're going to get into all of the goodness there, which I do love. So excited to have have new colors. So when it comes to colors, I'm a fan of swatching it out. And I always say when you swatch, you need to swatch on things that you would normally use this product on. And alcohol inks, they are a solvent-based ink designed for non-porous surfaces. So what is non-porous? Non-porous is a surface that is not going to absorb that colorant very quickly. So things like synthetic papers, plastic papers, metal, glass, acrylic, glossy surfaces. We'll also talk about some other ways that we can get around that feature, but really the benefits of alcohol ink is that slick surface where the inks have the opportunity to float across. And we're going to get into specific surfaces as we get into the demo. So I do swatch, and I'll talk real quick even about how I swatch, because I think that all you need is just a little bit of a reminder of how the colors go. I prefer my swatches to be full on, meaning I don't use any other liquids like blending solution and alcohol to move this out. I just want to see the actual color. But just quickly, because I'm not going to go through all 85, that would just take a very, very long time. But just how, as we go into the palette, I just want you to see where like the new colors kind of fit in. So for example, Cosmopolitan. If you look at the pinks that we've done quite a few pinks in the line, even down to like a shell pink. That often has like a perfectly saturated, like faded pink, right? Shell, that's this one. And then we did flamingo, like pink flamingo. So you can see these are, it's pink but kind of peachy. Then we went into pink sherbet, and that one is a little bit more of like the purpley side, but it's still very pink. And then from that, we jumped like right over to Gumball and Fiesta, but this is where Cosmopolitan came in. So that's where you can see when we look at a palette, I often look at, you know, where is that next break or transition when it comes to a color and where one can go in. And so I thought Cosmopolitan, I'm like, we just need like that pretty pink, that Cosmo pink or cotton candy pink in there. That was really important. Now reds, everyone is very, very funny when it comes to reds. Red, to have a true red, it's very hard to have much variation, but there is variation. And more than anything, there's variation when the color actually comes in contact with blending solution or alcohol. That's where these colors really start to break down. And so when you look at them, so like coral is more of like that orangey as we get into red. But then you have red pepper, that's one of the original Adirondack colors, a very great red, but definitely very orangey. But some of these colors, like look at this color that, this is, I know this is Poppy Field, but I just want you to show it. So Poppy Field, you can see is really shiny. Why? Because it has so much dye in it that they needed to have a thicker binder to hold this color on there. So a lot of people that use Poppy Field, like a little goes a long way, because if you just drip it all on, it's like really kind of saturated on there. And then this is where Brick comes in, because we also have Crimson, which is a beautiful crimson red. You can see that it doesn't have that high shine that Poppy Field had, but this is where Brick comes in. Brick is like that fired brick, that little dirty red, before we get into colors like Cranberry and Rosewood. All right, so you can kind of see as we go through the wheel. I felt, well, no surprise, that I felt that we were fine in the orange world, because we did do Ember last time, which was kind of like Crackling Campfire. We have Sienna. You know that we have plenty of yellows with Lemonade and Dandelion and Sunshine. We get into more of the burnt ones with Butterscotch and Caramel. Then we get into greens, and yeah, there are so many different greens, because green could be seen so many different ways. There are yellow greens, there are blue greens, there are true greens, there are bright greens, lime greens. And that's where it's like a playground. And this, I think, is where Juniper came in, because Juniper, it's more over here. It's right next to Moss. There we go. So Juniper is kind of, I would say, more of that pistachio kind of transition as before we go into Moss. So I get that it was needed, because when you look at these deeper colors, even though we have brighter greens, say like Meadow, we didn't have anything in that pistachio bluish green. And so I agree that Juniper needed to come back, and there was no reason to reinvent the wheel and call it something that it didn't need to be, because there is a pistachio. It's just not nearly as vibrant, as intense as Juniper needed to be. But then when we get back to these other greens, these like more yellow greens, like lettuce and willow, and there's even oregano. As we get into these mucky ones, we needed wilderness, because I needed this kind of anchor, because I felt that oregano was great, but it didn't really have that deep dark value, and that's why that one was so important. And I'm just sharing exactly what I think when I go through, because there are a million color options when you're designing color. Like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? I could have done all of them. Well, not really, but I wanted to do all of them. So let's get into the blues. We go into teals, and I felt, again, there was plenty of teals with aqua, pool, and laguna, and mermaid, and there's so many different, more of a greenish, and then also more of a bluish turquoise, like aquamarine, and even turquoise. And we get into blues, and blues become very, very funny, because as we talk about these colors, you can see that we go into like bright, true blues. Then we even go into like indigos and cobalts. We have denim and stonewash. I mean, look at indigo. Indigo is like the poppy field of blue, see? You can tell when that ink is really shiny, you're like, why is this so much more shiny? It's because in order to have that saturated color, we need to add more binder so that color really kind of sticks in there. But before I go to yonder, I want to jump onto this, because this is Bayou. I could just, it's like, it's so pretty. It's ocean, it's sky, it's yummy. To me, it kind of fits in, well, I don't know, kind of like where, I mean, this is monsoon and this is denim. So to me, it kind of goes into more of those darker, deeper blues. But if you mix it with any of these previous colors, including yonder and glacier and indigo, it does become a really good blender. Okay, so that's where I needed Bayou. But now we're going to jump back to the purest of blues. So we talk about indigo, we talk about cobalt, and we talk about yonder. So stonewash is really the lightest of these kind of true blues. And you can see, in my opinion, the importance of these colors, because these two right here, very saturated, cobalt and indigo. But there wasn't anything that didn't have like that. I'm going to just call it almost like a purple value, because there's so much blue, it almost reads as a purple. This is where yonder came in. It's like a true blue, like prize ribbon, blue yonder. And that was inspired by my friend Shell, because she would always talk in that. Right? She still does. She's like, it's over yonder. And we're like, what? Who talks like that? But let me tell you, anytime I see blue, I think of her, blue yonder. So then we're going to get into Chronicle. Where did Chronicle go? Where? I don't know. To me, it's the same place it goes with the World of Distress, kind of in the brown muck transition into grays. And so these are all the browns. There's some beautiful browns, you know, from latte to ginger to teakwood to espresso. There's so many great browns, and you can make brown pretty easy with alcohol ink. But then we get into Chronicle. So look at Chronicle. Chronicle is like that old paper. It reads sometimes a little bit more green, because old books go from this either beige taupe or this mucky green. And that is exactly where I wanted this color. And man, they nailed it. So this is a funny one. Again, this isn't any blending solution, no alcohol, nothing. This is just the ink. So look at how the ink dries. It dries into all of those tones just when you drip it on. Wow, so crazy cool. I absolutely love that. And then we get into the next muck, which, as you can see, would be smudge. Now, in this world, like in the muck, okay, I often talk about like smudge and gravel and mushroom. Now, gravel could be like the cooler one, or it could be the mucky one. This is kind of the in-between. You could argue that it goes more over here, like after slate could be gravel, but it could also, it has some interesting undertones. But let's just compare these two for right now. This is smudge and mushroom. So mushroom, as you know, if you followed us through the years, we talk about the magic of mushroom alcohol ink, because it is a chameleon. It starts out this way, but you'll see in the demo, it changes into so many different weird properties when you add a solvent to it. But it's very dark, and so often if you drip it directly onto a surface, it becomes too dark, and then you try to manipulate it, but you'll see when you manipulate it, it could change on you. And this is why I felt smudge was so important to me. I mean, I'm happy that these also come open stock, because like when Ranger sent me the inks, I'm like, okay, I'll take 2 of everything, but I need 6 smudge, because I know I'm just going to be shaking it on things and letting it do its thing. It's like, again, the distress to the world of alcohol ink. But you can see that it's got so many great tones to it. It could read a gray, it could read a taupe, it could read a beige, it could read slightly green at times, it could read slightly kind of bluish at times. It is also the chameleon color that pairs really well in the world of mushroom. And then we get into flannel. So flannel was important because this is slate. This is slate gray. This was the only gray that we've had in the alcohol ink the whole time. And they're really, you could see it is very dark and kind of greenish. And so I wanted more of that reddish, almost pinkish kind of gray when you compare the two, if you're looking at undertones. And I think flannel really comes in. You could see also that, you'll learn in the demo, the more you layer alcohol ink, they'll change even on its own. So you can start with a color, but even unlike traditional dye inks, even with distress, alcohol ink really can change its property in an instant just by a layer, which is so cool. So that was the importance of having a color like flannel. And then we'll jump back to that gravel. So again, if I pull in gravel, you can see that gravel can either be that space between slate and black, or it could be a little bit lighter than mushroom and maybe not as green. So gravel to me was also really important. It was more of that kind of mucky, darker gray, maybe almost hickory smoke-ish, but it has a little bit more of a green value when you put it next to green, but it could also have more of a cooler value when you put it next to flannel and slate. So that's really what I love about swatches, because if you are wanting to pick colors for a project, you can do that. I even do swatches for mixatives, for alloys, and even for the pearls. So the alcohol pearls have pearl in them, have mica. Beautiful. We'll talk about all this stuff now that we've talked about the colors. Okay, so far so good. Everyone all right? Perfect. Let's clear this up. Asked and answered. Well, you know, we haven't even started yet, so there's going to be a lot of great stuff. I think the bottle went down. I don't know where it went. It probably rolled under there. Whatever it is, unless it's smudge, I may not need it. All right, let me get that the other way. All right.
If I can see it, I'll grab
I think it went under that machine right there. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. All right, let's bring this in, get this set up. Okay. Looks pretty good. All right, so I'm working on the glass media mat. I can tell you, I can take it out of the kit, Mario. Let's gravel. Bayou. Oh, you know what? It wasn't smudge. It was flannel. That's all right. I'll be okay without. But I'll take it out of this kit right here. I dropped it, hit my foot, off it rolled. So.
Oh, I see it.
Oh, Mario got it. See? Just before you save the kit. Thanks, Mario. You got it. Okay. So work on a protected surface. I'm working on a glass media mat. Now, if you are working on a glass media, if you have it, remove your craft sheet. Alcohol ink will stain the craft sheet. Okay, so now we're going to go into like this rapid fire basic. Like I said, if you want to know more about any of the stuff that I'm going to blast through, you can check out the playlist that I've done on YouTube. Mario should have the link for that. All right, and so you can kind of get a little in depth, but we're going to talk about basics. Okay, first things first, alcohol ink, as I mentioned, non-porous surfaces. There's all these types of warnings because you want to work in a well-ventilated area when it comes to using alcohol ink. That's super important. You want to work on a surface that will not stain. So if you use it on your dining room table, you want to cover it with a non-porous surface. Otherwise, it will stain whatever you apply it to. If you want to wear gloves, you can wear gloves. It will stain your skin, but you can clean it off. You can clean it off with hand sanitizer. There's different soaps. There's a brand called Scrubby, which is a great soap that will also take off ink. It's one of my favorites. I use it to clean my hands after every demo, and it takes things off without intense solvent. But there again, if you want to wear gloves, you can. As far as cleanup, you'll see that throughout I'll use paper towels for the most part because I don't like to use a cloth. The cloth that I normally would use for water-based inks, I don't like to use it for alcohol ink just because I don't want to soak a bunch of solvents into this material and smell it or just have it in my studio. So I do use something that's more disposable for cleanup, but it could be whatever you want to work with. You do you. As far as cleanup, as I mentioned, hand sanitizer is my favorite, but you can also clean with just regular rubbing alcohol, isopropyl. Now in the world of alcohol ink, 91% or higher is going to be the best. The lower the percentage, the less intense this seems to work. So in the world of alcohol ink users, we like to work with 91% or higher because it's just more of a pure form of solvent that just does the magic with the ink. The reason I use hand sanitizer to clean up is because it's often in this gel form, and so it just stays wet longer for cleanup. So that's what I do, okay? So that's kind of the basics. We've already talked about inks, but let's get into some tools that we're going to work with before we break out the inks. There's a lot of tools, and I'm not saying these are the only tools. Please don't think that. These are just tools that I've done with Ranger specifically for this medium, but you can use a lot of different things that will provide similar results, okay? The first thing is going to be this tool. This is an alcohol ink air blower. It was inspired by like a camera lens cleaner. The difference with this one, it has a bigger bulb and it has a bigger opening. Often the camera lens cleaner is a smaller aperture, so when you're, it's designed to clean dust off of a lens. This is designed to move ink. So I wanted something that had just a a bigger opening and a larger bulb because I don't want to actually squeeze this all the way to move the air unless you want, you know, splashes or fireworks. This is more like I can just gently press the bulb and actually get a really nice airflow out of this tool. So that's what this one is, and that's why it is different. But that doesn't mean you can't use a lens cleaner if that's what you want. As far as ink tools, I do keep mine in a little trash can. Just going to use the mini blending tool, and in this world of alcohol ink, we're going to work with felt. There's nothing special about this felt other than it's already die cut. So you could use craft felt if you want, but it is nice because it is a nice thickness that we find hold the ink well, and it is something, again, disposable. Can you use blending foam and dome foam with alcohol ink? You can, but it's going to waste your ink because it's really going to absorb into that foam, and that's why we use felt, because it's a quick way to put it down, and it's also, again, disposable. So that's where I keep mine, because you need a lot of felts because you go through them, okay? Then there's other tools that help control the ink a little differently. This tool set, nothing special about these other than it's packaged for what we like to use them for. So there is a mini mister. It's the same mini mister that you would have. You can fill this with alcohol, not blending solution. See, I had both things in my brain. Do not fill with alcohol blending solution because, as you can see, it's kind of yellow. This is the base for alcohol inks, and this contains a resin. The resin is what makes the ink stick to all the non-porous surfaces. And if you spray this, it will stick to anything, including if you accidentally spray your eyes, or if you inhale it, it will stick to the inside lining of your lungs. So you do not want to spray blending solution at all. Alcohol, on the other hand, you can spray this. If you ingest it, it just tastes terrible. If you spray it in your eyes, it's going to sting, but it's going to be non-toxic in that way. So this is something that you'll see spray, and for that matter, you can put it in a mini mister, or you'll see I talk about other spray bottles. Then we have paint brushes. Again, nothing significant other than we found that these brushes, they are synthetic bristle. They hold up to the solvent. So if you are trying to use other brushes, just beware that if your bristles start to fall out, maybe the solvent that you're using is going to erode the adhesive in that particular brush. These we found to be really stable. So that's why we have that tool set. Then we also have an alcohol blending pen. This used to be called the fillable pen, but it really isn't designed to fill with alcohol inks. So it's not like a Copic. It's really just a pen for blending solution. It has two tips. So that's why there's two different caps. So like a large brush tip and a smaller one. You pull out the nib, the instruction on the package, you pull out the nib and you actually drip in blending solution to this to be a blender pen. Could you drip in isopropyl alcohol? Yes, you can. You can fill it with alcohol if you don't want to use blending solution, but you'll see that the blending pen really allows you to blend the color better than regular alcohol, which will simply lighten the color, okay? Now it has clickable caps, so when you put it on, there you go. See how it clicks on? That's going to create that airtight barrier so the solvent actually stays wet. There is a material inside here. So that's what makes this unique. It's not like a hollow chamber, say like a water brush where you're like, oh, I'll pour that in. This has a material in there that keeps that solvent wet so you can use it again and again, and then you just fill it up when you're done. Then we have a palette. This is the same palette that's in Distress. It's just branded different because depending on where it's merchandised in the store, we wanted people to know that you can use it with Distress and you can also use it with alcohol inks. What do you do with it? Well, you can just drip your alcohol ink in it, let your alcohol inks dry in this palette. So these are dry. And then you can go in with a blending pen that has blending solution or a brush with solvent and reactivate it like a watercolor palette. So think of that. You can actually take that and use this as a watercolor palette, but for non-porous surfaces. Because you're like, hello, Captain Obvious, why would I need it? I have watercolor. Well, this allows you to watercolor on acetate and glossy paper and non-porous surfaces where watercolor would just wipe off. So that's kind of the cool thing about watercoloring with your alcohol inks. Again, basics. We're going to get into all the solvents and all the chemistry of it because that is very, very important as we work through it. Okay. I got that, I got that, I got that, I got that. Okay, let's talk about surfaces and then we'll jump into ink. So surfaces, oh my gosh, I cannot stress that enough. Surfaces, you just need to play. There is a whole world of surfaces, so many different brands out there, and all I can say is that you need to find what works for you and stick with it, okay? You can play around with other things, But if you find a surface that you like, there's no reason to defend why that's the best surface. It just works for you because there's so many people that use alcohol ink in a bazillion ways. Some use it for art reasons, some like to paint, some like to do background, some like to die cut. So don't be all judgy McJudge that yours is the best. It's just the best for you. In the world of alcohol ink for Ranger, I used to use glossy cardstock. Like this alcohol ink cardstock is a glossy, it's a clay coated paper. And to me, this was my jam. This is what I thought was the world of alcohol ink because that is what I learned on. I learned on glossy paper. I learned that it's not the same as photo paper. Photo paper is emulsion based, but the backside of photo paper is a great plastic paper that works for a lot of people. So a lot of people, you know, find photo paper at the dollar store. They're like, oh, hey, I like this. Others go, oh, I hate it. Makes my colors fade, all that stuff. But this was where I started. And honestly, I don't work with this surface at all unless I'm stamping. Now it's a stamping ink. It's a stamping cardstock. It's not even a background cardstock. Can you still use it for backgrounds? Yes, and I'll demo why. But my favorite is a synthetic paper, and Yupo is, in my opinion, the original company for synthetic papers, but there are a lot of brands out there, so again, try them. Ranger collaborated with Yupo to manufacture this and allow us to cut it in sizes that we wanted it cut in. So in the world of Yupo for Ranger, we just do a traditional weight. This is just an 8x10 sheet, so it's not even 8.5 by 11. This is a plastic. It's a synthetic paper. You can use either side. So we refer to it as a cardstock. It's an 86 pound on the standard. We also have a translucent sheet. Translucent, think of this as vellum. All right, but vellum is very porous in our paper world that you can tear. So think of this as like vellum for the alcohol ink world. It is semi-translucent, but it is still this plastic surface, just like the regular Yupo, but this one you can kind of see through. And then we have heavy stock. Again, in the world of distress, we have different weights of paper. So Yupo heavy stock is just a heavyweight surface, 144 pound, so significantly thicker than this. If you're using it for card bases, this might be great. If you're using it for art pieces, you might want something a little thicker. So Ranger offers these in 8x10 sheets, but then we also offer it in pre-cut sizes. So if you wanted something a little smaller, like 5x7, it's the same. So we offer the regular, and again, it just breaks down by value. 5 pieces versus 10, depending on how you want to cut it up. It's also the translucent in both sizes, and of course, heavy stock in both sizes. Again, these are all synthetic. That's why we're using them. They're plastic papers, if you will. Then we partner with another company that does great synthetic surfaces. And I love that about Ranger. So instead of us going and sourcing and saying, oh, this is ours, it's like, this company already does it. So let's just collaborate with them and ask if they will cut it down to the size we want for the papercraft world. Because these are in the art world, you can find Yupo in really big sheets. You can find it in rolls for painting. I mean, it's pretty incredible. But the people at Graphics, they have great surfaces. This one is called Durabrite, and Durabrite, they have it in white, but we already had Yupo, and there was no reason that I needed to do white with them. But they have a great black, probably my favorite, also synthetic. So this is a black opaque plastic sheet, perfect for alcohol inks and backgrounds, and I'll share that in just a second. Then they have Duralar. So there's all distinct differences. If you want to know the properties, go to their website and read all the different properties, but both of these are heat stable, which is great. I love Duralar because it is a clear, transparent sheet. So it is very nice to die cut. It is heat stable, so I can emboss on this and it's not going to melt or shrink. So it is my jam. It has white tissue in between each layer, so they don't get all scratched up in the packaging, which also I appreciate as a maker. So that is Duralar. I don't know why the names. I just know that bright is black and Lar is clear. But hey, that works for me. Then we have these other ones, and you're like, well, hold on, Holtz. I know you do metallic and sparkly stuff in your ideology line. Yes, I do, but those are craft-based. Those are meant for inking with distress or sanding or embossing with embossing folders. This paper that I did with Ranger is completely different than both of those, so just know. This one is a brushed silver. It is an alcohol ink cardstock, which means the back of it is not craft. It is designed to keep the ink from soaking through it. So it allows that ink to float over a metallic surface, and it also doesn't wear off that metallic surface. Does that mean you can't try your metallic cardstock? My gosh, no. If you have metallic cardstock, ink it. See what happens. You might love it. You might love how it dries. But if you're experiencing where that metallic is rubbing off, well, that would be why, because it's not solvent stable, and this is. Same thing with sparkle. It doesn't look very sparkly in the bag, but when you take it out, it has a really nice very fine sparkle, but it's smooth. You can even see how the light reflects on it. So it is a printed sparkle, but there again, the back, it's a thicker stock, so it doesn't allow that ink to soak through it, okay? It is a cover weight stock with that sparkle finish. Again, designed for alcohol ink. But does that mean you can't use what you want to try? It might be brilliant for you. But those are the surfaces that we do in the world of Ranger to support alcohol inks. And those are the surfaces that I'm going to work on throughout the demo today. And like when I talk about Yupo, for the most part, it'll be standard Yupo unless I say, oh, it's Yupo heavy stock or Yupo translucent. All right? Whew, gosh, it's like a marathon. I am rocking it. I'm rocking and rolling it. Now, one other surface that has come and gone in the world of Ranger, and it has come and it's probably going to go, which is sad, but I get it. These are alcohol ink foil tape sheets. Now, foil tape sheets, this is an adhesive back aluminum. It's adhesive back metal. And back in the day, man, when I was just starting and when I was teaching with quick cuts, remember that, Mario? I do like little quick cuts and the IKEA mirrors. Oh my gosh, you can go back in the time vaults and see. But I used to go and buy metal flashing tape from the hardware store because it was sticky and it was metallic, and I used it with alcohol ink. But it only came in that roll, and it was sticky as soon as you go to use it. And it only came in different widths. And so I said to Ranger, it'd be really great if you could find that in bigger sheets. So they did it in this size. This is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so that's going to be your A2. They also used to do it in 6 by 12, but I think that size has already been retired. But hey, maybe you can find it somewhere. But this is one of those surfaces that is strange because a lot of people at face value go, oh, it's metallic cardstock. No, it is foil tape sheet. So it is adhesive back metal that you can stick on things. And you can go back and see videos that I've done where the benefit of this, where you're like, well, hello, why would I want to just peel off a piece of metal and put it on a piece of cardstock? Well, if you had metallic cardstock, maybe you wouldn't. But if you wanted cardstock that was actually metal, that's why. So I do it for a lot of grunge and steampunk things. But I really love it because I can put this sheet in an embossing folder. So let's say you have a cool embossing folder of, like, I don't know, gears or industrial or heck, even flourishes and flowers. Because it already has that liner, I can put it in an embossing folder first, emboss it, get that pattern in that metal, do my inking, do whatever, and then when I want to apply it, I simply peel this off. Now it's that sticky metal, and you can see, I mean, it's thin aluminum, but I can cover things. I can go over a picture frame. I've often done like a styrofoam heart where I did like a steampunk heart. That was done with this product. It is great, and I get it. It's not everybody's go-to every day, and I think what you need to understand from a manufacturer is they can only manufacture and bring in whatever sells. So I get that. So if you have some, a little does go a long way. I'll be honest with that. I don't use this all the time, but it does exist. So just know that. But that's why I wanted to preface it at the end, because it exists for now. I do love it. Okay, so we talked about surfaces, and I do see questions in there like, will this work and that work? And my advice to all of those questions, like I said at the beginning, is try it, because it may work beautifully for the look that you want to achieve. Okay, now let's get into the stuff, the inks. Now you can store your alcohol inks however you want, but I'm just going to give you a couple of tips. As one that stores, for demos, I store in tins. For studio reality, I throw it in my spinner. Now, let me just tell you, and you'll see which bottles we probably cleaned up, because Mario's like, how did they get like this? Okay, in the world of these inks, ideally, you should store them upright. You should store them on some type of shelf or some type of storage system. This is the alcohol ink storage tin. It is a stackable tin. It has a nice window on the top. It's got a little hinge latch. And more importantly, it's got this little insert that when you remove inks, your inks won't fall over because it sits into this. So this is, in my opinion, the ideal storage solution for inks, because it doesn't take a lot of space and it keeps them how they need to be. And when you go and pluck colors, and yes, there are people that, punch out little sticker dots and put it on there to mark them. But really, if you look at them, see, like if you're using them in your studio, you can see from the top and the side pretty much how what color it is, especially if you keep them in color order. You can be like, okay, this is bright, so this is most likely dandelion. And if you're wrong, it's only one bottle over. So I don't really bother marking these with any type of labels or anything, because I can see in the tin. The thing to keep in mind, though, is if you store them on their sides, although this cap is designed to keep the air in, it's not totally leak proof unless it is really cinched down. And that is like tighter than what most people want. So if you throw them in like I do, you might get a little leakage down the side. If you're okay with that, like I am, well then again, store them however you want. But if you want the caps to be easier to remove and keep them on, then to me that's really the important thing when it comes to keeping these alcohol inks lasting longer for you. I also keep my mixatives in there. I have a separate tin though for those. I like to keep my alcohol pearls and my metallics in this particular tin because these need to be shaken up. And these inks, these translucent inks, do not need to be shaken up. So that's really how I store them. And we'll get into the shakety shake when we get into pearls and that in just a bit. Okay? So that is kind of my whole ink storage conversation. I'll put that there. Oh, that looks really nice. Okay. Then we're going to talk about how these inks flow with each other. As I mentioned, this is a solvent-based ink. So solvent works with solvent, meaning these are not water-based inks. So you can't use water. You can't use a sprayer of water to manipulate these inks. They don't react with water the way ink pads do. These react with solvent. So your solvent in this world would be what you would do with water in your ink pad world. Blending solution, you'll see the difference. I'll do a quick comparison. This is the base of this. So blending solution is designed to blend, lighten, and also remove the color. But this one gives you a better flow of the color. But I also understand that you don't want to necessarily pour a bunch of resin on your work, especially if you're working in a larger scale. So if you see alcohol ink artists, a lot of them use, and I love to use it now too. I'll admit, I use probably more alcohol than I do blending solution, but blending solution is a must for certain parts of this line. So I'll talk about when it's vital that you use this over this. But for the most part, 91% is really great because it allows this ink to really dance across the surface, create beautiful flow. The challenge is though, it does impact the color. If you use a lot of isopropyl alcohol, it will dull down or make this color wash out and doesn't keep its true intensity, which means ultimately you need to use more ink if you want that saturation. Okay, so that's kind of the trade-off. It's not a train smash, but that is the trade-off. So how can you kind of apply these? Well, I do keep alcohol in a little spray bottle. I used to use the mini mister that's in the tool set, but when Ranger started selling these little spray bottles, these are what comes with the mica stains, the little mini sprays. They sell just this empty bottle. This is my jam because it'll hold the solvent and allows me to really, I love to spray alcohol. But again, alcohol, not blending solution. You can also get little needle tip bottles, right? These are easy. You can find these at any craft store. This also has alcohol, so sometimes you just want to, squirt down a little drippity drop. That works instead of, lugging this big thing around. So any kind of bottle that you want to drip it on, that's going to work. You can also use things like a pipette. If you ever see these used, Ranger sells these as well. They use these in the lab. This is, they use these for a lot of lab type work. But Ranger sells these, and these are great because you can also, people like to mix up ink. You'll see artists that will take like a little plastic cups and pour in isopropyl and pour in some of this, and then you see them like drip the inks on there. This is a great way to apply it because you can suck up inks and drip it on, and they are disposable. So that's a great thing. Then we're going to get into this, but this is going to be much later. But just know if you're like, he hasn't talked about lift ink. I will, but it's its own animal. So I don't want to confuse any more than I already did. And then last little tool, again, that I'll show at the end is a splatter brush. Same as the Distress one, it just also has packaging for alcohol ink. So a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff to talk about. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm jumping out of my head, but I hope I'm not confusing you. I just want to give you the basics because once we get into demos, people are like, why did you use this over this? At the end of the day, you can use whatever just kind of works right. There's just going to be differences in how things are kind of played. Now, if you happen to live, I'll talk about this. No one asked. I'll answer the question that no one's asked. But if you happen to live in Canada and you buy alcohol ink at stores in Canada, the Canadian law requires a child-proof cap on these inks. That's their law. That's their requirement. So in order for Ranger to ship these inks to Canada and sell them in those retail stores, they need a child-proof cap. And I agree. It is a bugger to get off where you have to like squeeze and push and twist. And people despise the cap. I get it. However, that's just the law to have it there. But if you want, you can purchase, I think they're like $3 for 10. You can just purchase the standard cap from Ranger and you replace your caps. It's exactly the same bottle that we use for all the alcohol inks worldwide. But if you want to get rid of those childproof caps, if you have it, Oh, there you go. Kuber was like, I can't get them off. So Kuber, you can take them off, order replacement caps, throw the other ones away, and then you will have the standard cap. It fits the bottle exactly the same because it's the same bottle, and you will never have that frustration again. But just know why that is in Canada. It's the law there, but it doesn't mean that after you purchase it, you can't just replace it. So again, a shout out to Alan because he added them to the website yesterday, because I see the chats and I'm like, can't you just sell the caps? And he said, well, I don't. I'm like, just that's if they want to keep fighting with it, keep fighting with it. But that's the thing. Okay, so there you go. I addressed the caps. I didn't want to have it, and it is good to have replacement caps. Judy, you're right, because there are times that like my cap is just filled with muck, and I'm like, oh, I wish I had a clean thing. I do like the fact that Ranger offers more and more, I'll just say containers, like empty spray bottles that they use, because as makers, you never know when you're going to want a little spray bottle, and I like the fact that I'm getting it from an ink supplier where the ink can actually live in here versus some plastic that it might eat up. Okay, let's see. Where do I want to start? I think I'm going to start with just talking about some backgrounds, and then I'll do swatches. How about that? We'll start with swatches because I think that will be great, great basics. But here's what we're about to explore, okay? Because if you're like, well, now you've talked about all this stuff, what does alcohol ink even do? Alcohol ink does magic. It does a lot of amazing things. It creates beautiful, flowy, fluid backgrounds of all different styles. It could be grungy, it could be colorful, it could be beautiful, it could be something that you can just use as a background. These are Yupo, by the way. You can stamp on it. You can stamp and emboss. So you would stamp in a permanent ink, a waterproof ink like, I've got a pad here, like Archival, or any other waterproof permanent ink that works for non-porous surfaces. But do some embossing. This one's also embossed. I love that. That you can just, again, do a background and go, oh, that looks like a sunset. Great. Then find a stamp where, that just becomes a cool effect. So often when you have stamps, let's talk about that. Maybe you have a stamp set like this that you haven't used because it's watercolor or whatever. Silhouette stamps are also important, or die cut. If you weren't using a stamp, but you had like wildflower die cut, a black die cut goes beautiful over an alcohol ink background. So keep that in mind as a maker. Sometimes people are a little put off because they're like, well, I'm not really messy. I think for the world of alcohol ink, just allow yourself to be messy. Even if you want to glove up, just let the inks do their thing, because you can create this pile of magic that you can incorporate stamps, stencils, die cuts in no time. Other surfaces that you can ink are like I talked about, that Duralar. So this is going to be that synthetic surface. Let me put it on something white just to look at that. I demoed this in one of the videos. See, it's embossable. So even though it's clear, because it's heat stable, you can stamp and emboss on it. Then you can go in and lift color. But even just swiping the same sheet, because this started out as the same sheet, just you get so many, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. So this is great for the people that want control over their backgrounds. This will really allow you to break that habit because you have no control. You let it go. And I absolutely love that. Then let's see. Oh, here's another piece. This is just a clear piece where, here, let me put it on a white background. Look at that. Woo! It's see-through. So you have to remember that if you're going to do something on Duralar, you need to put it over something clear. Well, how do you attach it? Well, however you want to attach something clear. You can sew it. That's one way. Tiny attacher, another great way. Brads, another great way. But if you use adhesive, you'll see it. So in this case, if you really wanted to use adhesive, I would just put some on the back of this and then stick it down. Something like glossy accents would work, or even collage medium. But keep in mind, you would still see some of that kind of shadow from the adhesive, but maybe it'll blend into your ink background. But ultimately, you can use other types of attachments. Again, sewing, brads, whatnot. But you need it over a light surface, or you can't appreciate the color. Then we have wispy effects. So this is just, I like to sometimes just have a full sheet and just go to town and create beautiful rainbowy blends. That's a lot of fun. When we get into darker surfaces, as I just mentioned, because these inks are see-through, you're going to need something to allow this ink to show up. And this is where that mixative comes in. Let me grab it. Just grab this bottle real quick out of I like having these trusty tins, especially for demoing. This is Snowcap Mixative. Now, there's a few colors in the alcohol world, especially if you look online or at stores. You might see this giant bottle. This giant 2-ounce bottle, there's only a select number of colors that are in this in this bottle. Those are more basic standard colors for the artist world that are really using a ton of ink. But Mixative, the Snowcat Mixative, comes in this size as well. Not every color comes in this size, and not every color will come in this size. Again, this was more for the art world that people, you know, I mean, they're working on like 36, 48, even bigger pieces that you might see in a hotel lobby, really that big with alcohol ink. The YouTube, just search alcohol ink artists. Oh my gosh. I follow several as well. I like to share their work. But Snowcat Mixative, this is going to be a white pigment. So this is an opaque solvent ink that you would put down in addition to your alcohol inks, and then it makes those colors more opaque when they overlap. But see, where there is no Snowcat, like that blue still went over there, but you don't see it. I still love the effect. So I love using it because it has almost just a beautiful way to blend. Could you drip some of this and drip alcohol ink in a cup and actually make an opaque pink? Yes, you can mix it however you want. But that's the importance of Snowcat, which I'll show you as well. And then if you change surfaces, well, this is where that metallic surface came in. So you can see the difference where the ink on white is just beautiful, but ink on metallic just looks more, well, metallic, because it is over that brushed silver background. So it just creates a beautiful look, but it is paper. Or the sparkle. So the sparkle just gives you that sparkly finish to your inks. Again, it's paper, so it's not really glittery. It's just sparkly. So that's if you want to change the effect. This is what we're going to get into. These are things that I've done in previous demos. I just like to sit down and play. There's also different resist techniques that we'll talk about. We got a lot to cover. Get on with it, Holtz. You gotta talk. Well, you know, there we go.
You got so much to say.
I do have so much to say. It's fun. Yappity yap. It's good. Okay. Let's talk about swatches. I do suggest that if you're going to start out with inks and you've never used alcohol ink before, swatches are a great place to start because it's almost like a meet and greet. Be like, oh, hey, how are you? Cool. Let's see what you're all about. And then you can see what these inks do. You can get to understand their color a little bit easier. So I like to swatch on the surface I like to work on, which is Yupo. So typically I'll start out with a sheet of Yupo. This is not a math class, but I often just show people like how I prep swatches. Keep in mind this is not 8.5 by 11, so all those measurements that you know in your head when you're chopping up paper, you kind of have to reset your thinking. Okay, so we're going to go 8 by 10. So we're going to start at 5. We're going to cut this in half. So I'm just using a cutter because it is synthetic. This is plastic, so this you can't tear this stuff. You can emboss it. You can die cut some of the thinner stuff, but you need to keep that in mind. So I work with the guillotine. You can also work with the slider. That will work. You can use if that's your jam, it will cut with that. You just might have to do a second pass, if you will. And then I'm going to cut that at 4. So it's like 5 by 4. All right, there we go. And then I take these, because now I've got these. So these are great card fronts. These are 5 by 4, so this goes right on an A2 and gives yourself a little border. So that is easy when you have that. But then we can talk about like how we make like the stick, if you will, okay? So on this one, if you always forget your measurements, just remember there is a ruler here. So just put it back on your trimmer and go, oh, okay, that's 5. So I'm gonna cut this in half, so that's gonna go at 2.5. You could do the math backwards, but man, that's where my brain is like denied. Then I'm just gonna cut it at 1 1/4. I'll put this one in at 1 1/4. But could you have started at 5 and take off 1 1/4, 1 1/4? Yes, if you're that good with your trimmer, knock yourself out. Okay, and you can also do little marks. So a lot of times I'll just go like, okay, 3. So these are my swatch sticks. So for each piece, I'm getting 4 swatch sticks. So 4, 8, 12, 16 out of a sheet of paper. I like that. Then I'll do my inking. So I'm just gonna put this away for now. I'm not gonna cut all of them. And I'll do a little bit of inking. So how do I ink? Well, I'm just gonna pick a color. Let's do a little bit of smudge because, well, why not? But we could do whatever. And you can work anywhere you want on the glass. I'm going to use the alcohol ink air blower just because, again, that's going to help move that color around. When you use this and you're blowing the ink, you can actually move this around. There's no ink right now, it's just the air. But just to kind of show you that when the ink is on there, it does provide a little bit of weight. But if you angle it and you get under the paper, you could move it. But don't worry, once the solvent drips off, it's going to kind of keep it in place. But you could use things like a grip mat if you want to. And I have that. I might use that for something else. So what I like to do for a swatch, for me, to get something that looks like this, is I want to be pretty generous with one layer of ink, because I feel that if you add multiple layers of ink, you're kind of altering the color. But you'll see artists, and there's no right or wrong side to Yupo. So I'm just going to just kind of put some ink down the middle. I'm just going to use the blower just to kind of move that color around. You can push some of it off the edge. And for this one, I just like to kind of manipulate it. You get what you get. And you can let it relax. So all of that action just happens with the inks. But if you want to move it while it's wet, you can still take that and manipulate it. Okay. But let's talk about this spot real quick, because I'll add another little drip. So already I have surface tension, because as soon as some of that ink drips off the side, it will go underneath this, which is totally fine with me. But that's what adds like that surface tension. That's why I said, you know, when you start, don't think you need to tape it down or stick it on anything, because the ink will do that for you. But you can slide this off, or you can get something like a craft pick or anything that you need to take it off. So this is just that little scribbly line. It's still wet. You can see that little shine. This is when you like blast it with the blower. See that little firework thing? I love that. It could be good for florals, for little splatters behind maybe a butterfly stamp. There's a lot of ways that you would intentionally do that. But then the softer you are, you can see where it creates more of that, I don't know, almost that agate flow. And this, again, is just the ink by itself, because I want to see it. But let's just say you're like, hey, you said you do you, I'm going to do me. I want to do another layer. Okay, on this end, I'll do another layer of the same color. Before I do, let's just talk about the bottle, because I didn't see the chat blow up yet, but I will talk about it. Because people freak their freak about a fast drying solvent ink that's like, oh my gosh, I have to get the cap on right away. The cool thing about the bottle design for Ranger alcohol inks, and this is a great example, it has a tiny little nib in, and as soon as you take the cap off, it's almost like a vacuum where this ink climbs up the side, and there's a little bead of ink. You see that? That just, I didn't even squeeze the ink. That just traps in there. When the bottle moves, it's like it wants to pull up the ink, and there will always be a little dot of ink. See? I'm not even squeezing it, because these are hard plastic bottles. It's not like a glitter glue. It just does it. But the ink itself will sit into that nib, and that will keep the air from going in the bottle. So you can leave the caps off for hours at a time when you're working, and when you're done, you can put the caps on. And I think that's why a lot of times people say they have messy caps, because if you just throw your caps in a pile, you don't know what's what. Well, I'm pretty specific when it comes to matchy match, because I like to make sure I have the right cap on, because I don't want any residue from another color on there. But it wouldn't be the end of the world if that happens. But just know you don't have to put the lids on these when you're using them. Leave them open. It gives you, I think, gives you more freedom to play. But let's say on this side, I'm going to put a little bit more smudge. So maybe we'll do a couple more drips, and we'll move this around. I'll move some over the top of that existing color, and I'll push some of this off over here. Now, as you're doing this, again, you can control, if you're really light, see how you can just gently kind of move that? You don't have to make that noise with it. You can really just use it like a paintbrush. That's the whole idea. And I'm only pushing like this much. So I'm not even squeezing it in half. That's what I love about this blower. Honestly, I use this a lot of times when I'm doing watercolor with distress or distress-free inkers, and I want the ink to flow. You know, yeah, you can pick up your paper and move it, but often this is really nice where you can kind of get that gentle movement and a lot more control, because it's got that little schnozzle right there. And if I want this to dry, I'm going to just keep going with that little, just to dry that. You'll see in just a second when I hold it closer what that means. Okay. So now we've got smudge, but look at the difference in the color. One layer, two layers. So you see what I mean? That when you go back and add layers to this, even though this does play true to water-based inks in your stamp pads, with alcohol ink, it's way more impactful, just that second layer of ink, because the color really changes its intensity. And that's why when it comes to palettes, you can start out with some colors that you like, but you can always build some intense colors just with the ink by itself. We haven't even got into the playtime. So right here is where I was just kind of drying that ink a little bit, because I loved that shape. Alcohol ink will always continue to spread out as it dries. That's what gives it this kind of smooth, fluid movement. So if you ever want the ink to stop, you need to dry it in place with some type of cool air. Okay? So far, so good. Next, I think I'm going to work with, let's do Bayou for a little bit as we play into this one. We'll talk about another way to do a swatch if you want. Let's say you want the ink to just be a little bit more flowy. I'm going to go in and I'm going to do two swatches. One I'll use alcohol and one I'll use blending solution so we can identify the difference visually before we go in. So I like to get this out of the way. I'm going to put down a little bit of that solvent. Again, this is just 91% isopropyl. I'll drip some inks in there so you can see how the ink works. It kind of looks like, I don't know, little eyeballs at first. It goes in and then it becomes pretty saturated. And then I'm just going to move this. So this you can see already, it's really fluid. Why? Because I put down a puddle. There's no like drippage. There's no drip count. How many drips, how many drops. You do what you want. But this becomes very, very fluid. And you can see why this is so loved. It allows people to really have way more coverage with color. You can also create overlaps, but anytime you introduce a solvent, it's going to start changing this color. It's going to change how this color works. And what I love about Ranger inks is that they're not just going on the shelf and they're like, oh yes, I will take the Bayou ink down and put it in the mix and now we have Bayou. No, it's a lot of different ink colors that make up this color. And this is where the magic happens. When you introduce a solvent, it starts to actually separate those colors. And you get all of these unique effects. You might get purple tones, you might get blue, you might get yellow, you might get things you never even thought could be in that color, but it is, and that's what made the color, and it's incredibly cool. So this isopropyl, let's do the same thing, but we're going to do some blending solution. All right. So same thing, blending solution. We're just going to put that little puddle there. We're going to take our Bayou, I don't know why I put the cap on that, and we're going to do our 3 drips. So can you see how different that drip reacted to blending solution? It just started to blend. It didn't stay that kind of dark solid. Now as I blend that out, can you see I use the same 3 drips, the same amount of solvent, but can you see the difference in the intensity of the color? It still makes it flowy, but the color intensity is way different because isopropyl will always dilute the color no matter what. So that means you just need to use more of that color if you want to maintain its integrity. Blending solution though is designed to maintain that color's integrity. So there is never a right or wrong, but you just need to understand that your choices obviously impact the outcome and why that's happening. So there's never a time where it's like, when do you do blending solution over this? It's my mood. Most of the time when I'm doing backgrounds, I'm more the ISO guy because I don't mind throwing inks on there, okay? I'm just going to move that around a little bit. Okay, so now we have 2 swatches, both of them done with Bayou. Let's find the original Bayou on here. So I just go from the back. There we go. It's in the dark blue. There's Monsoon. There's Bayou. Okay. So this is just Bayou by itself. Again, no solvent. So you can see that it really comes closer to the one with blending solution color-wise than ISO. So let's pick this up. This one's not totally done drying, so I'm gonna speed up the process. So I'll just use a blower for now. I'll just speed that up just so I can pick it up and I don't want it to move. So I'm just doing quick little bursts of air. You could use a hairdryer. We talk about that if you're going to work with a hairdryer, and I think I did give Mario the link to this as well. But you can use any type of hairdryer or fan or portable air blower. There's all sorts of things. This one was kind of, it's a styling brush, so it had a brush attachment, but I like it because it's like my embossing gun. This is not an embossing gun. You really don't want to use a heat tool on this to dry the inks because the inks become really sticky if you use high heat. But this one just allows me to kind of go in and dry it quick. It also allows me to move this around. But you can find these. I know you can find them on Amazon. I think I got mine maybe at Walmart too. So check it out. Oh, thanks, Mario. I use it occasionally. Okay, so this is our background with blending solution. It's very dreamy. So can you see the difference in how the ink dried? This one is just Bayou. And so as the inks start to overlap, they create these lines. But this looks more blended. Why? Blending solution. That's really what blending solution is designed to do. It is designed to blend the color. Even if it's a single color or if it's multiple colors, it will blend them. It doesn't mean you can't achieve these lines, because you can see you'll start to kind of build up those lines, but your background is just more blended because you're introducing more of that base solvent with it. And then we have isopropyl. So isopropyl, beautiful, but now we can see some of those undertones come in. You see some of that like little pink and brown that shows up, right? Definitely lighter in tone than this. But now that the three are together, you can see that the blending solution is slightly more blended because more of that white paper is showing through. But in the dark areas, it's matchy-matchy. But you can see with ISO that the color changes, it shifts. But it doesn't mean you can't add more. There's so many different possibilities when it comes to working with ink. The moral of the story is just have fun, but understand why you're choosing what you're choosing and ultimately what you're trying to achieve. Okay? Excellent. Put the cap on that blending solution because I love to knock it over. Okay. So far, so good. Once I'm done, with my swatch, I just take a punch. I like this punch. This is the punch that I use. I set that little, it has like a little clicky guide. I set it all the way to the front. I'll normally take the Yupo. You can take up to 3 pieces. This is just going to be your 1/4 inch punch. I just line it up visually, left to right, punch through the plastic, and now I have my swatch ready. Could use a regular paper punch. I have not found a traditional school paper punch that will punch through Yupo because again, it is plastic. But this is from We Are. This is one of those, I don't know what it is. It's like a chomper. It's really, it's a good punch. I wish I could just have black handles. Let me just take these off. These green ones drive me crazy. They drive the camera crazy. There we go.
Bye-bye green.
Bye-bye green. I wish, see, I just ripped them off. I wish I could get black. There you go. We Are, if you're listening, black. There we go. I'll just do silver. That will make my brain happier. So you just punch through that. You can print off labels. These are just printed just from like Avery label sheets, but you can handwrite if you have great handwriting. Just use a permanent ink. And then I use these rings, and I use these rings a lot. These are from Stampers Anonymous. They're just a cable binding ring. It's like a key ring, so you can just use them. It's a key ring, and it has this little screw that you just untwist, and it's a cable. There you go. Stays open. So there's little screw threads on both ends, and then that little barrel just connects them. So the reason I use this over a book ring, I put my stencils on this. I load a lot of stuff. Like even when I get alcohol ink swatches or even something like this where there's a lot on there, and a book ring, I have them just kind of pop open. So I love that I can just secure these, and I like that cable ring stays flexible. So there you go. That's the swatch. I'm just kind of answering the questions that I typically get after the fact. Okay, there we go. Swatch, great place to start because you're only dealing with one color. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to punch them. You can put them in a binder or a book, whatever you want to do. But I just find that having them on a ring, besides that hanging in my creative space, it just looks nice. It's like paint chips. It is just easier for me to go through, and I don't have to keep them in any order. I just put them on here in order, but it's very nice. So there you go. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. So I do see a question, how permanent is the color? Well, I'm not quite sure what that means, how permanent. It is permanent. It is a waterproof ink. They are tested for light fastness, but there again, we've learned because these are used in the art world that it just depends. You know, are you putting it in direct sunlight? Well, any color will fade in direct sunlight. Are you putting it in gallery lighting, fluorescent lighting, or are you just using it for cards? I mean, there's a lot of different factors. I will tell you that if you're using it for an art medium, I would suggest following alcohol ink artists or join the alcohol ink community. I think it's called Alcohol Ink Community, and it's on Facebook. And it's a community of everyone from makers to artists, and they share a lot of tips. We get asked all the time about sealing, and Mario and I, we joke about it, like we don't talk about sealing. He often sings a song that has a tune, but we don't talk about sealing. And here's why. I don't seal my work. I don't seal my distress ink work. I don't seal my collage work. I don't seal my alcohol work because it is waterproof. It's not going to come off on my fingers. Even with distress, I don't seal that either. But I know some people want to seal because you're going to be doing art. You're going to be selling. So get that information from an artist or someone that's very familiar with sealing. I know there are products like UV resistant spray for people that are planning to sell their work in a gallery. Kmart varnish is another product that people use, and they have all these tricks of how many coats and how you need to dry it. Some people use it with resin. These are stable with resin, but not all resins, because not all resins are created equal. So some resins it's more stable in than others. And again, community of artists that are familiar with those mediums are going to be better equipped to answer that. But I don't seal my work. I've never sealed it, and I don't see my colors fading or wearing off because I don't use that. So that's just something that I just don't use, okay? But it is a solvent-based ink that is designed to maintain its color, but like all mediums, that it's kind of a loaded question really as far as how stable anything is or how long a bottle of ink lasts. But get some information from those people that use it, because it's very good, right? We don't talk about sealing.
You don't want to miss those figures.
No. All right, so swatch out of the way. We'll talk about one more thing, and then I'm just gonna, because I think I would have answered all the basics by then, and we're gonna throw caution to the wind and just start playing some inks. Let's just say you didn't want to work on Yupo. You didn't want to work on anything synthetic, because synthetic paper is amazing, but sometimes, you know, you have something like maybe you have etc., or maybe you have an art journal, really, that's all paper. You don't have an art journal made out of Yupo, and you think to yourself, gosh, I really want to use alcohol ink in my art journal, but how do I do that because I don't have Yupo? There are always workarounds, always, because I am the 5-year-old that's like, what if, what if, what if? So because alcohol inks are designed for non-porous surfaces, you think to yourself, what do you have in your craft room that you often treat something with to make it non-porous? Well, there's a lot of things, believe it or not. So this is a craft board, just regular, this is a etc. board from Stampers Anonymous. And these are all alcohol inks on that surface. Now what? If you just dripped it on, it's going to soak through and do absolutely nothing other than stain it. But there are products, very basic products that we have as makers, that you can use with alcohol ink, and each one is going to give you a different outcome. So again, there's not a right or wrong. It just depends on what you want to do, okay? First one, gesso. I love Dina Wakley Media gesso. Love it, love it, love it. White gesso. I don't know why I love it, but I love it. I love Dina, but I also love this gesso. It goes on smooth. You can brush it on, palette knife it on. But this gesso, when you apply it over a surface, including an art journal, anything porous, so this, what I'm sharing applies to anything. It applies to wood. It applies to paper, cardstock, watercolor cardstock, craft, cardboard, anything porous. You paint on gesso, you let it dry, and when you use alcohol ink on it, it work, in my opinion, this gesso, I can't speak for all gessos again, so don't get all, again, Judgy McJudge, where you're like, I bought gesso, you told me. This is the gesso that I worked, because because gessos work different. Anyone that's used gesso knows that some are more chalky, right? Some have a different slick finish. So just be mindful before you prep a whole book. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to poke fun at anyone. It really is important that you test out what you have to make sure, because it might work just as well. But this one, when you drip on the ink, to me, these inks work very similar to Yupo. It really does. It's great. But then I wanted to try collage medium, because, hey, I know collage medium makes something waterproof, right? When you put distressed collage medium, it makes it permanent, makes it waterproof. So I'm like, oh, well, then that's sealed. And it did. It sealed it. But I didn't find that the inks flowed as well. And that's even over white paint. So I actually did some white paint, and I put some collage medium down. So that's why it's white under there. Collage medium is actually translucent. So just for full transparency, I wanted white because I wanted to really talk about how the light shines through. And in my opinion, the collage medium seemed to grab the ink a little too much. And so that's why it's like, could you do it? Maybe if you were like painting it on or doing a wash of alcohol ink, yes. But if you're dripping it on, it becomes really saturated really quick. Then an easy one, white acrylic paint. Now again, I'm just using distress paint, but this is white acrylic paint. You put that on, let it dry, and look at that. White was good. What I found happened, and again, I only tested with distress paint, so this might work totally different than somebody else, but this particular paint, in my opinion, it started altering how this ink was looking. Can you see like those little pink and purpley nuances? I kind of felt that maybe it must have something to do with what's in the paint that was reacting with the color, and this stayed more true. That was just my opinion, for whatever it's worth. But metallic, heck, we have metallic paper. Well, what about metallic paint? So I just used distressed metallic paint, and hey, I liked that. I like that. It really, to me, looks very much like that brushed silver paper. So if you had a surface and you're like, hey, I got some of this silver paint, go for it. Now, why am I choosing whites and silver? Well, again, these are translucent. So could you use gold acrylic paint? Sure, but your base is yellow. So that means if you put pink over yellow, it becomes orange. So that's really why I kind of stuck with white, or could you use a pearl? A white pearl would be beautiful as well. So you could use white pearl or silver actually for your metallic. But just keep in mind that whatever color you base it with is going to impact the color of alcohol ink. But that's fun. That to me is a great workaround, again, for people that like to do mini books and art journals, stuff that maybe Yupo is not going to be as forgiving with. It's a great hack to just try it. And that's why, I mean, I've had this swatch for years because it's just a great reminder with my inks that it's like, hey, come on, you don't always have to do that. You can try something else. I think it would be really, really great. So there you have it. Those are the porous non. Let's get into playtime. Okay. All right. I'm just going to start playing. So first thing I'm going to do is I'll open up the new colors. The new colors will remind me to use them. I won't just use the new colors. That doesn't seem like my nature. And I would like to work with the square part of the media mat, just almost like a game of chess. You know, we're just setting it this way. I know what cap is, but hey, maybe you have another thing is you can print out. Let's see, where is it? You can also print out the sheet like from Ranger, and you could even keep the caps in there. So, you know, I'm actually thinking about, because I know they just updated this with the new colors. I'm like, I think I'm going to take this. I think I'm going to laminate it. And then when I work with alcohol ink, I'll just put the cap in the right thing. It sounds good in theory, but then I think I'll probably just throw that right out the window as soon as I play. Okay. I hope it wasn't overwhelming, but again, if I don't cover the basics and I just get right in, I don't feel it's fair for people that have never seen this medium before. And quite honestly, for someone that's used this medium for 20 years, I'm still excited about the basics because it's those things that you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't done that in forever. I totally forgot to do that. That is what makes it all worthwhile. Okay, I'm also going to take out a couple of alloys, and we're going to talk in particular about alloys and mixatives when we start demoing, because there is a distinct difference, but you got to see it to believe it. And then we'll get into pearls. Oh my gosh. I'll take this. I'll take it because I'm going to take, you know, a little bright pink, a little yellow, colors that I know I don't have in the new. I'm going to take a little bit of orange. We're going to take some teals. So I'm just building it up. And this is what I also recommend you doing. You're doing just like what I'm doing, which is, if it seems boring, it's an important part of this process, which is pick some colors initially and just go with it, because with 85 colors, the palette is pretty substantial, and I think it could get overwhelming if you were making choices in real time. Okay, so now I picked like some pink, yellow, orange, because I didn't really have that, a purple, because I didn't really have that, some teals, didn't have that, a darker brown, because sepia is really good, and then mermaid, because, well, that's also a great color. They're all quite amazing, but I will take out mushroom and pitch black to remind myself to show you these colors, because these, like, this is like a freak show, these two, really. What they do, wowza. Okay, off we go. So when I work with these, let's just get these going down. I'm watching the chat. I'm glad. Oh, thanks, Beth. The thing about alcohol ink, really, because I know not everyone is messy. Just this is one of those things that, hey, if you need to pour yourself a cocktail before this, or you just need to be in the right frame of mind, this is one where you just get out your inks and play. I don't ever suggest alcohol ink as something like, I need to make a card, so let me get out my inks, do a background, do the... No, I don't think you'll enjoy this medium as it was intended. This is really about, I'm going to set up, maybe I'll glove up, and I'm just going to have fun, and you will create a ton of backgrounds in no time. But you have to give yourself that creative permission. It's like a play date, really. It's just a play date with this. That to me is what it's all about. Okay, here we go. Again, I'm choosing not to wear gloves. You may have seen videos where I wear gloves. It depends on my mood. And today, I'm not feeling it. Okay, I'm going to start with Yupo, because I think Yupo is really, it's great. I'm going to work with ISO, so if you see it in this bottle, it's always isopropyl. If you see it in this bottle, you'll see that it's blending solution. But for the most part, I like to just play with isopropyl if I'm just doing color. So I'm just going to squeeze some on there, and we'll go in with some colors. Now, the beauty of alcohol ink is the fact that you can play with color. You can mix color at one time, but you can also go in and layer colors. So I'm just going to start with a few. This is Yonder, Bayou, and Juniper. Just shake it on. You don't know what's going to happen at this point. And then I'm going to start just moving this color around. Now, as you move this around, the longer this sits on a synthetic surface, the more the color will start to soak into that synthetic surface. Even though it's plastic, it doesn't mean that that ink is just going to roll off. It starts to soak in. So you want to kind of keep things going. This is what we have at this point. And look, it's going to go through a lot of ugly before it becomes something. So again, that's why I said you'll really get over yourself quickly, because you're like, oh, I don't like the pink, I don't like this. The beauty of this medium, man, you change it in an instant, because the solvent ink replaces whatever it goes on top of. So even though that was blue, bam, Juniper, out of the way, here comes Juniper. Or you're like, hey, well, okay, so what if you did orange? Well, what if I did orange? Orange is going to go on there, and it's going to be orange. Now, because there's blue down there, is it going to be dark mucky? Well, it depends. My ink right now is still wet, so this is where these colors are actually kind of blending, which I don't really mind. But I'm just showing you the properties. I'm not looking for anything finished at this point, because you're like, why are you just making explosions? Because you need to understand this medium, and again, your choices. See how all of that is wet? Wet means that these colors, just like watercolor, wet on wet blends, wet on dry layers, okay? So because all of this ink is still wet, my colors are blending, and you're gonna start getting some great fun effects. So don't panic. If you wanna keep things moving, go back with some more isopropyl. It's gonna react right away and just create beautiful wicking effects. So now I'm gonna throw in, this is where I'll just start actually playing with some colors that I want. I'll do some pink, a little bit of yellow, and then I'm just gonna move this. Just gonna kind of move that around. And when you see something you like, keep it. If you see something you don't like, I often just like kick it off to the side. So let's say I'm like, ooh, that's like a whole lot of muck. Great. Put some ISO there and just push it out of there. Look at that little overlap. See, that was some yellow and some blue. Liking how that is happening. We're gonna go with a little bit of little Cosmo, a little light pink, because I think that's gonna be fun. Beautiful. All right. Love that little, and you can see, I mean, the benefit of having this, like, again, whether you're using this with ink or watercolor or anything, just having this little air blower makes things move, okay? Now, this is starting to dry. People ask about drying, and I used to say, oh, it dries in seconds. We live in Arizona, so in Arizona, things do dry, but this is also a very finicky medium when it comes to climate and temperature. If it's humid outside, these inks create weird little sweat beads on the top of it. If it's dry, they tend to saturate and dry much quicker. But the beauty of this medium, again, keep going. So watch how it'll just start changing. So this is just color. I didn't even go in at this point with any solvent, because I want to create more of that color first. Now if I want to move it, I can put a little bit of that just isopropyl alcohol and see how I can just move that color off the edge. Embrace the space as well. If you don't like, let's just say this, you're like, I don't really like that. Go back in. You never have to stop until you are happy with it. You might even like just what the solvent is doing, like what that's happening right now. I put in a little bit. I'm going to throw in a little bit more of that little boysenberry right there. I'm just going to kind of move that around. And I want to keep that away. So see, I'm taking the blower and just kind of moving it. But I love this float that I'm getting. Yeah, see what I mean about how that kind of flows in? So right now we're just playing with just how this flows around. Another bit of advice that I have is work on a piece that maybe is bigger than what you need, especially if you're going for cards, because then you have the potential of cropping. Let's add a little bit of yellow there, and we're going to go right there. All right. There we go. Still have that green, but now I'm just bringing a little bit more yellow, and I can blend that there. Okay, look at that. All right, so at this point we have kind of this flowy look. See, all that stuff is still very, very wet, but this is where we can go in and actually play. We can control ultimately how this works, and I'm going to play with this background just to show you how you can continue to manipulate it. You may hate it when it's all done, but that's the beauty. We can actually start over on this same surface if we wanted to. All right, first thing we're going to start with is a paintbrush. Get yourself a little dish, something shallow. Actually got this from Mr. Cup. But find a dish. It could be a portion cup, it could be anything, and I'm just going to put some alcohol in here. Not much, just a little bit at the bottom. And I'm going to treat this, again, kind of like a little water dish, but you can take a brush. This is that from that toolkit. It's just a small little brush. Clean some of that solvent off, and then when you go in and just kind of dot this, you can create some really cool effects just from dotting the solvent. And you can keep everything close. You can go around. If you have everything close versus far apart, I'll show you. Close, you can create that striation. Further apart, you can create that effect. So that's with a brush. Could you move it around with a brush? Could you actually just go in and kind of paint with a brush? Yes. Could you paint in some color? Yes. Solvent will react with this in a completely different way, because once it's dry, the solvent, instead of blending like it did here, is going to react with itself. So even if this was a color, so let's say we just dripped a color on that same spot, you can see that that color doesn't want to spread out like it did when it had alcohol. It wants to sit there. If you want to move it, you can move it with the brush, you can move it with the blower, you can add some solvent if you want just to kind of make this more washy. You can pull in some of that color. I mean, the whole thing about this is really, it's all about creative play. And the tools like this, it's just going to give you different control. Like, to me, a brush is always going to give you a brush stroke or a dot. But the blower is an easy way that you can kind of blow that color where you want it to be. The other thing to note is spraying. And I think that's everyone's fascination with wanting to spray and splatter. A spray is going to give me a spray pattern. A splatter is going to splatter. So I could take a brush, and again, this is just in isopropyl, this is just in ISO. And I could do, you know, off my finger, I can do that sort of splatter. There we go. That creates that cool kind of galaxy effect. I can also take the splatter brush and dip that in the solvent. And this one, you pull back and you just let it go. So you're just gonna like pull it back, and I can create some other splattery effects. So this, again, I'm working from the middle, and I'm just pulling it back and letting that fly. Just, again, whatever tool you're more comfortable with. But look at how it changes already just from adding a lot of splashes. So fun. And all of that muck, I love the muck as much as I love the white space, because it creates that shadow. But we don't always have to do this. We can really, I'll show you, we can create washes of color. We can create all of those different elements. But you splatter it on. It couldn't be easier. It really couldn't. So I'm just going to set that one there, because the other thing you need to learn when it comes to working with alcohol ink is step away from the background, because the next layer could change it dramatically. But if you often step away and come back, you're like, hey, I like that. So you do what you want. We're going to take a little bit. We're going to, again, start with some ISO. We're going to go in with some Chronicle, a little Bayou, definitely some smudge. And that I'm putting in the solvent and out. I'll start just by kind of moving this around just to create a foundation. Just kind of mixing that. And then keep going with your color. Like, don't be afraid of playing with the inks. There's a little bit of Bayou. And we're going to brighten up some of this. So I'm just going to go in with like a touch of Yonder. And see how just that touch can really create that kind of effect. And because it's still flowing, that color is just going to blend. If I want to move that, just a little quicker burst, but see, I'm moving this as well. I'm not just staying in one place, just blasting it. You're treating it like a paintbrush. You're moving it around, but the ink is gonna do its thing. It's gonna have a mind of its own. Let's go in with just a bit of gravel up here and a touch of wilderness. These colors are, you can see, these mean business, but they're really, really cool. You want to move that a little bit? Well, give it a place to go. So you don't have to also soak it with solvent all the time either. Just give it that, it's almost like channeling some fluid. Where you want water to go, you're going to add water. So same thing, where I want that ink to go. And I love what it just creates. I'll hold this up in a second before we continue. But I love what's happening. This is where all the undertones and all of that is really taking shape. Look at that. Just letting the inks do their thing. If you release the control of that, it's way better, because you're like, just watch as this is drying. You know, when people say, oh, it's like boring, like watching paint dry, I'm telling you, watching alcohol ink dry is mesmerizing, because as this dries, it will completely morph into something else. You're going to get these cool wicks of color, these little, see how that blue is just drying and it's creating this little ridge? Ah, it's stunning. And to me, this is like a sky, like a monsoon sky that we would get in Arizona, even with like the clouds up there. So this might be a background that you're done. You're calling it done. You don't have to splash it. You don't have to do this. You could be done, and maybe that's where the tree line goes because you love the sky, or maybe here. Maybe you love that, so you can cut it and get 2 cards. So my point is, don't overthink the ink. Be happy with it, and don't always feel, it is a thing. I say all the time that when people are starting out, a lot of people are intimidated by alcohol ink, which is completely opposite of what I suggest. I'm like, if you're new to the ink world, kind of start with alcohol ink, because it teaches you right away to let it go. Just get over that fear, get over that control, and be good with it. Be good with whatever it is that you want to do. All right, let's go to the next one. So this next one, this is, again, I'm working on Yupo. Heavy stock, thin, it just depends. If I know I was going to make something more standalone, I might do the heavy stock, but for the most part, I just work with like standard traditional Yupo. All right, so for this one, we're going to introduce some metallics. So we're going to talk about blending solution. Blending solution is a necessity, okay? Not an option, a necessity for any alcohol inks that contain pigment. Pigment is the solid particles, so that would be all of the mixatives, that includes snowcap, the alloys, and the difference between a mixative and an alloy, because we have both. We started out with mixatives in the early years. This was the metallic of choice that I did with the alcohol ink line. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this demo, through the years, we find new manufacturers, new suppliers. And the cool thing about alloys is this provided a completely different type of metallic to introduce to the alcohol ink world. And these have very different effects. Very, very different. So some might argue, do we need both? I don't know. I mean, I still don't know. I think it just depends on preference, but they have a distinct difference. So, you know, will Ranger keep them all around? I don't know that. I don't know the answer, but I want to show you the difference between them before we go into the demo. So we'll start with mixatives. So mixatives, that would be these. They come in gold, silver, copper, rose gold, gunmetal, pearl, and white. These were always designed to mix, create that flow. And these, again, are just mixatives. This is on that Durabright with blending solution, because you need blending solution. Remember I said it's not, and it's mandatory, not optional. If you just drip the metallic on here, it would flake off. You need the blending solution because that resin, that yellowy stuff, is what bonds the pigment to a surface. So if you ever read where someone's like, oh, I use this and it flakes off, it's because they're trying to do this with isopropyl and not blending solution, because they think this is like, you know, some fake elixir. It isn't. It really is a resin that is designed to bond the ink to the surface. But you can see how mixatives mix into the background. See, they're just kind of flowy. A little gold, there's some silver, there's rose gold. They're cool because they mix really well. And of course we go back to snowcap, there's that white. Very wispy, I guess, is the way I would describe this one. But then we get into alloys. If you follow a lot of alcohol ink artists, you know they love these chunks of metallic that kind of fit through their work. The cool thing about alloys is it does just that. The big difference with alloys is that instead of creating something flowy, that would be gold, this is the comparison of gilded alloy. Do you see the difference? So the difference is, one, this is a leafing metallic. So the shine is way, way better. I mean, you can see when that hits, it's a totally different effect. Different kind of pigment. It's a leafing metallic. But instead of it being kind of wispy, this is where that metallic starts to chunk together. And that's my preference. So I'm going to use alloys in this because when I start using the alloys in here, you're going to see like these, they're little islands of metallic. There you can see, wow, look at that on Foundry. You see how, like, this is sterling. Foundry is like a gunmetal color. Let me try to go back and compare. See, this is what I love about swatches. It's fascinating when you see the visual. Okay, this is silver mixative. It's pretty, it's nice, it's silvery, but look at the difference. I mean, the metallic, it's almost like a mirror. It's so cool. Then you've got copper, Mario's favorite, rose gold. So, oh, sorry, this is statue. This is mind, which is copper. Rose gold is kind of like and you can make your own rose gold if you don't want it already made, but it's essentially just copper and sterling. little touch of gilded in there, but it has a cool break because it's got like a silvery gold back there, and then that copper holds on to the top of it. And then there's Foundry, which is more gunmetal. So Foundry doesn't clump as much, but it's also very cool. But those, again, require blending solution. That doesn't mean you only use blending solution. No. So that's where we're gonna go in and talk about when we use it and why. So I'm gonna start my background the way I started my other ones, with a little bit of ISO. Because I also don't want that thing in mind of like, nope, you can only use this. Nope, you don't have to only, but you have to use it as part of your work. And so hopefully this demo will kind of show you. So I started with some sepia, a little bit of flannel. I can't help it, guys. Sorry, I just got to go with some smudge. But then let's start adding some really pretty kind of tealy turquoise. I just like to throw a lot down. A lot of artists really prefer starting with one color. I just like, you know me, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. So I do love the fact that you put stuff down and it allows me to kind of create a flow. So we started with some isopropyl, and this is what's just going to give me, I'll just say, a foundation to start with. Now, while my ink is wet, I want to work my alloys in. So I need to shake this up. And I'm going to talk about this in just a second, but right now the race is on because I need to keep this wet because I want my alloy to work in. So now I need to put down blending solution to put my alloy in. So I'm going to put down, now could you have just started with blending solution? Absolutely. You did not need to start with isopropyl. You could have done all of this 100% with blending solution. But let's put in some alloy. Look at that. Whoo. And now it becomes something totally different. So that blending solution is what is going to, it's not only going to mix all this together, it's still going to give me that flow, but now it's going to start doing some crazy stuff with the alloys. I'm going to try to hold this up. This could just be a hot mess and I'll regret it, but I just want you to see it. So you see the alloy, but watch what happens when the air hits it. You see how you can actually move those little islands? And if you want to break up the party, so you see that little party right here? If I just want to go in, see how I just broke that up? Now crazy. Now we got a big thing of gold. It almost looks like a heart. It's beautiful, but I'm gonna break that up. Now that I have blending solution introduced, the binder's in. So I can go back to isopropyl now, or I can continue with blending solution. The reason I don't continue with blending solution is because each time I'm using it, I'm setting down some of that resin, and sometimes it can get pretty sticky or pretty messy. But see how I can just go in and break that up. Maybe I want to just add some color. So maybe I want to add a little lighter color and throw in some of that. Ooh, just telling you, it becomes just this crazy, crazy party.
It's just so fun.
It's fascinating. Oh, it's just fascinating to watch. And you'll see, like, there's so many different effects that you can achieve. And let's say you don't even like this darker area. No worries. Just flood it. Flood it with whatever solvent you want. That's always going to reactivate that ink. And you can completely feather this off the way you want it to be. But I'm taking this, so the thing about alloys, and I'll try to hold this up again. The thing about alloys is they always want to meet back up with their friends. So when you put this down and you move it, the alloy is going to break apart, but then as it dries, it's going to be like, hey, what are you doing? Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. Have you seen this? And they get back together and talk. So as it's drying, I often blast it just to kind of keep those little fragments out there. See how that changed everything? Ooh, beautiful. I'm good with it. So there's our background, and now you can see those, it's still drying, but now you can see those beautiful chunks of metallic that we got from an alloy. But the important thing is when you introduce a metallic, you still have to lay down a little bit of that resin. Just think of it as resin if you want, to get that metallic to stick. Okay, super important. All right, another background. We can call that one done. So let's talk about, what if we don't want all this blowy flowy nonsense? What if we just want a background? Okay, we can go old school. Let's just show a background with this, because don't underestimate the power of the alcohol ink tool. After all, that was the original. The original one was actually rectangular, but you know, I started with alcohol ink, you know, even before little tools like this existed, where we were taking, you know, a little clip and clipping felt to a little, you know, a little office clip, and we were applying ink that way. So the benefit of this is it applies ink, but in a very different way. Instead of it being kind of wispy and flowy that we've seen, and you guys kind of see that here, it's going to give us a lot more texture. Texture is a great way to describe what this is going to achieve. When I apply this, again, whichever one you want to do, but I'm going to incorporate color and metallic. So the first thing I want to do, I'm just going to do this whole thing with blending solution just so you can see. I'm going to apply a little bit of blending solution, not a ton. You can see there's not much. It really was just a little bit of that. And then I'm going to add my color to this. Now when I add my color, I'm just adding squeezes of color. So I'm putting the nib into the felt, giving it a quick squeeze, and I'm done. I'm not drawing anything, no little squigglies, no smiley faces. I think I'm going to do a little red. I'm going to throw a little bit of brick in here too. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to start just stamping on Yupo, okay? And when you stamp, I'm kind of holding this and I'm turning the tool in between my pounce. Just get some color down. You get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Now for this one, can you see how like it's moving around? Yeah, I do. And it's driving me crazy. So I'm just going to get a piece of media grip. So this is tonic media grip because this is solvent proof. And I'm just going to place that down. That's just going to apply, just going to allow a little bit more grip to this. Now, the cool thing about this background is that it's totally different in its texture, but it's also easy to manipulate because of this tool. If I want to introduce some new colors, so let's say we want to go in with, I don't know, like a little bit more rust. So I'm going to do a little sepia, maybe I'll do a little bit of orange in here. Maybe I'm even going to do a little bit of little Cosmo, and I'll do a little bit of yellow. Watch what happens when I just introduce the color from the tool into this background. That allows me to really position where I want to put that color and how it just starts to work into this background, okay? You can completely change the look of this background by going over the entire thing. But as these alcohol inks start to dry, we're getting these little drops, these agates, if you will, that create a totally different effect than when the ink is fluid. Because as the ink dries, the solvent reacts with itself. So that means every time I stamp on this, it's going to stamp a new bit of ink and it's going to want to start to dry. Again, let me hold that up. See that? So when you stamp it, it's going to start to dry. And here's where we can manipulate how this ink works. Let's say though, for argument's sake, you're like, oh gosh, you know what? I don't like anything I'm doing. First thing, don't give up on it. But second thing, if you don't like what's going on because maybe you think this color is too muddy, get rid of this. Get rid of this piece of felt because the colors now in that, it's almost like taking a paintbrush and using the same paintbrush without ever cleaning your brush. Just think of it like that. It's no different. Like if you were painting something and you never cleaned your brush and you just dip from one ink into the next, it would at some point become muddy, but maybe you like where it's going. But if you don't, change your felt. Just get rid of it. Don't save it for any creative projects. It's just done. We're put on a fresh piece. This will now allow me to introduce 100% fresh color to this background. So if we decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to go totally bright. I'm going to go all Cosmo. I'll go in with definitely some flamingo, and maybe we want to add a little bit of yellow. We're going to go bright into this whole thing. Now watch the difference with a clean tool over an inked background. See how those colors, it doesn't even matter what's underneath. I'll get rid of that blue. I'll get rid of that muck. It's like, so I still have the undertones because solvents react with solvents, but now I was able to introduce totally new colors. And you might be like, you know what? You screwed it up. I liked it before. Don't give up. You can keep playing. Here I'm going to just do a little shakety shake of some of that pool. And now you can see because it's blue, blue on yellow is making green, blue on red is making pink. Maybe this one I just want to blow out. Maybe I want to blend it out. So blending solution, I can put more of it on, or it could have been isopropyl. And I can move this around as well. This one's just going to be a little lighter touch. You'll see where I'm going with this in a second. Could go in, continue a little drippity drip, but because I have blending solution, just kind of dripping this out. So you can stay warm and cool. I mean, that all of those things are easy. I think when I demo, I definitely go rogue because I like to do things that you probably wouldn't normally want to do with an ink pad, but somehow in the world of alcohol ink it works. Okay, so now we have a background. Now, I'll try to explain what I'm doing, but I can't hold it up to the camera and do it at the same time. But what I want to do is I'm going to stamp the ink tool because it's got solvent, and at the same time I'm going to blow onto this background. Some people do a straw. If you use a straw, you can. Just remember, don't inhale when the straw is close to your work, because inhaling these fumes, you'll end up a lot happier than you really should be. So it is important that you don't inhale these that close to the surface. But you see a lot of artists like gently blow with the straw to manipulate it. You can also use this to dry, or you can use a hair dryer to dry. So I'll actually use that because I can't fit my grape under the camera. All right, I'm gonna plug in that hair dryer. How about we do that? Okay, there we go. Good. Okay, hair dryer on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna stamp and I'm gonna dry. I'll show you what's happening. Stamp, dry. What it's doing is it's going to create these tiny little dots of solvent, because remember I told you solvent reacts with solvent. So as that ink wants to dry, it wants to spread out at the same time. But that cold air, again, a hair dryer, fan, whatever, it's going to freeze that flow, and then you end up with all of these tiny little specks of color. It's quite beautiful in there. So that's what creates that specks. If you didn't dry them, they would just blend out and float. Super, super easy to do. Now, can you do all the other things that we did before? Of course. You have the technology. We can take our cup. We can add some isopropyl. We can use our splatter brush, or we can use a paintbrush, whatever you want to do. And we can splatter this on. And that's going to create even more break of our background. If we want to stop it, we can use an air blower, or we can use a hairdryer. That's what I was saying at the beginning. When it comes to tools, it's just going to be pretty much whatever your hand is next to. But this has it has two fan speeds. So it has low and then it has high. Low fan speed is going to keep your ink from looking like spin art. But look at that. I love how just those dots just created a whole different galaxy. Now, I know this is going to freak people out, but let's just say you like this half, but you don't like this half. What do? Well, you have some options. One, you can cut it in half first. That's a given. That's an easy. And this one, this grip, I'm just going to pull this off for now, set it aside. But you can cut this in half, because that's really what I would do. If I liked a piece, well, that's what I will do. Forget what I like to do. It's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to make sure this is dry. So I'm just going to use a dryer real quick, just to make sure this is dry. And then I'm going to cut this. Now, anytime I put something into my trimmer, especially that has the acrylic on it, I'm just going to cover it with a piece so I don't get ink on the guard. But hey, if you're fine with it, be fine with it. I think I liked I'm going to say about a third. I'll just go at 3 inches on this. All right, just going to cut that. There we go. This way, if your background was totally dry, you wouldn't have to do this step. But see, that bit would have got on my trimmer. So there we go. I like that background. I'm going to put that over here. This one, I'll just use as an example of what you can do. Ooh, see, now that I cut it, snap, I like it. Oh, but I'm still going to get rid of it. Okay, here's the thing when I say get rid of it. Because these inks are always going to be reactive with solvents, that's the thing. When you start cropping it, it's like, wow, you can see all the beauty of it. But you can just take solvent and you can completely change it. I can just take isopropyl. I can put that over the top. I know this is going to totally freak people out. Take any tool. Maybe I'll even take a fresh piece, or you can take a paper towel, and you can completely get rid of that background. You could wipe it away and you could start over. It's going to be stained, and that's where there's a lot of different papers that different artists have preference on as far as staining, but you could start over. The challenge of that is that you really are kind of judging your work. And so do I ever really do that? No. I'll just throw on some more ink and end up maybe different than what I think. And that's where it's super important that you give yourself that freedom, that play, to not be so judgmental, because, well, I surprised myself. I had a background. I decided, oh, you know what? I'm going to cut this apart. And then after I did, I'm like, oh man, this is the one I was going to destroy, but I liked it. But I'm going to show you some other things that we can do with this ink. Here I'm just taking that tool and I'm just kind of swirling it around. Right? I put some more isopropyl on there, just kind of swirled it around a little bit. Maybe I want to go in with a little lighter color, so I'm just going to do a drop of that. I'm just going to kind of move that around. There's solvent on here. Maybe I'll add a little bit more. Just going to move this around a little bit. Then I'll take this, kind of give it that little swish wash. Okay. Kind of give that a little trail so it doesn't look like an island. So now I just took a background and just totally started reworking this. Then maybe for this one, I'm going to dry it real quick because I like it. But then instead of a hard splatter like I did here, I want to give it a very soft splatter. So this is where I'm going to take a sprayer. This could be a mini mister or your sprayer. You really want to keep your distance because if you're close, you're going to get kind of a whole blast of it. I also like to just I don't mind if my finger's in the way. It's just isopropyl, but I'm just going to go with just like little. I'm off camera, but I am just giving it like little sprays from a distance. You'll see in a second what it does. It's like it just hits it right before your eyes. Okay. See that? See that? Just a little soft. So now it just, to me, it has a really peaceful, it could be an oceanic vibe, but completely different than where we started. I kept with the same colors. I could have completely changed the colors, but I just want to kind of teach you that lesson that just like go for it and really, really change when it kind of creates this whole look. What do you do when your finished project is sticky and stays that way? If your project is sticky and stays that way, chances are you're using too much of this, too much resin, or you're using, quite honestly, too much ink because it has a significant amount of resin in it. It shouldn't be sticky once it completely dries, and I would say the resin would, I'm going to say, sets within the hour. The ink could be dry to the touch in a matter of seconds, like this is dry. But there's some ways around it. One, you can take foil, if you have any time, and we're talking leafing, or craft foil, and you can press it onto those areas and you can get it to transfer. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Here's one. Someone asked that question in a previous demo. So you can see this background where I had that buildup of resin. You can take metallic foil, and when you press onto it, it will stick to that foil. And if all of this was sticky at the same time, you'd get some really beautiful veining. So foil is one way to do it. Another way to do it is to take like an anti-static pad, like what you would use, maybe for embossing. Put a little bit on your fingers, not directly on it, and then just rub over the top of it, and that will stick to it and not alter the finish. So those are some options when it comes to that. Thanks, Mario, for pointing that out. Okay, so let's do, I want to do some lift ink, and I want to do, oh my gosh, I have so many things to do in my head. Okay, where are we on time? Ooh, gosh, okay. I'm going to save that idea for later, save that idea for later. Okay, we're going to keep these. We'll talk about those resists in a second. I'm just going to take these backgrounds and kind of throw them up to the side. I want to do something with pearls real quick now that we just did some backgrounds, okay? We're going to work with, real quick, alcohol pearl, just so you can see the difference and also understand what it is when you're working with it. So again, these pearls, alcohol pearl, is different than alcohol ink, even from the label. One says pearl and one says ink. Inks are all going to be translucent. Pearl is going to be a translucent ink with a pearl. You can see the pearl in the back. And if you've seen Distress Spritz or you've seen the mica stain, you know that Ranger, we add a lot of different pearls to a lot of different mediums. Different type of pearl, because we need something that's going to stay in a solvent. And different type of resin. These do have a mixing ball that mix it up. So I want to talk about something just that I shared. I haven't shared it in a long time because this was something that I did after I had my heart surgery, and I still wanted to craft, right? So let me just clean this up. I'm putting on some hand sanitizer directly onto the mat. Just going to use that just to clean up some ink there. I don't have to get totally clean, but I don't want any stuff here right now. And I'll talk about this next little gadget. This could be helpful for some people. It may not be for you. So again, it's not for everybody. If you, Mario just, when I brought this out, he's like, what are you doing? I haven't seen that out. Okay. So if you have any type of, it could be a medical issue, it could just be an ailment in your hands, it could just be something where shaking a bottle hurts, there are tools out there This I got from Amazon. It is a model paint / nail polish mixer. There's a lot of different styles out there. This one is my favorite because it's basic. It comes with little suction cups. It comes with these little straps. You get 3 of them. They're all the same. And it's this little device. It plugs in. So you can stick it down. You don't have to stick it down to glass if you don't want. You push this over that little square. Anyone, it's completely adjustable. And then if you have something that needs to be shaken up, like this alcohol pearl, you put it on there, you strap it around. There's another little notch on the other side, and then you just turn it on, okay? And it seems silly. You might be like, oh my God, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. But not if you're someone that really has trouble shaking because it hurts your hand or carpal tunnel or whatever, and you have now just mixed that ink in seconds. So all that pearl that was at the bottom is gone. It is all mixed in there, okay? The cool thing about this as well is, let's say you have something like this and you, again, have trouble just getting that pigment because shaking it hurts. Now, it's always a good idea to just make sure the lid is on before you put it on, you know, because sometimes the lid could be off. But even something like Spritz and a Spray, this whole little, it's like a rubber band, can go around any size bottle. Whoop. Don't turn it on, Holtz. Let me grab it there, and then that's it. So it's like vibrating and buzzing, but it like done. Crazy, isn't it? So it does allow you to kind of create with that, and that's something that honestly, until I needed one, I didn't even know something like that existed, because Mario's like, well, I can stand here and shake the inks. I'm like, well, that's really nice, but you know, I don't want you just to stand there and be the shaker. Anyway, yeah, that's what it is. I don't know if Mario put a link up there. It's just it's an easy gadget. It isn't, if you don't need it, you don't need it. But if you need it, it's cool to have. So, and it mixes them up really, really well and really quick. So I think that is important because, yeah, there's sometimes that like my carpal tunnel will just get the best of me on certain days, and I still want to make. So there you have it. Okay, so pearls. Back to that. Pearls you always have to mix. So again, this is something that when I go and use pearls, I often set them down on their sides so that pearl that lives here in my tin will go on the side of the bottle, and it just makes it easier to kind of shake up. And there's a lot of beautiful colors. Oh my gosh. You know, even something like Smolder. Smolder is very similar to Smudge. It's just really pretty. Okay. Can you use pearls with alcohol inks? Yes, you can. You absolutely can. Okay. So, oh, I'm glad you guys like the shaker. Well, I wasn't going to share it tomorrow. I was like, just do it. There could be a lot of people that, you know, really need it. And it makes it a lot quicker too. So even if you don't need it, because like these, you really have to you got to make sure that mixing ball gets dislodged. And that little thing, all I can tell you is check the cap. It'll only happen to you once, twice if you're stubborn, but it'll happen. Yeah. Nail lacquer shaker. And there's a lot of different ones. I just like that little one. And to me, that little square is better. Like they have all sorts of obnoxious ones. That one to me works the best. Okay. So alcohol pearls. I'm going to do a very important demo. And I've done it previously so you can see a side-by-side because again, if you're in any alcohol ink groups or you go on YouTube or you read, pearls got a bad rap. And the reason alcohol pearls get a bad rap is because people don't know how to use them. And just because you want to use it a certain way and it's not intended for that, doesn't make it a bad product. Remember that as you go through anything in life, from crafting to appliances. Just because you buy something with the intended purpose of what you have in mind, and that's not what it's designed to do, doesn't make it a bad product. And I love alcohol pearls for what they are. Alcohol pearls must be used with blending solution. End of story. No exceptions. You cannot use it with isopropyl. Isopropyl will destroy it because the pigments in here need this to actually disperse. If they don't have them, they will work almost like an alloy. Well, they will stay together. So let me just show you a side-by-side comparison on a piece of Yupo, just so we get it. We'll just use the same color. I can use, well, I think I did Intrigue last time. It showed up really well on camera, so I'll do that. And so I'm going to do blending solution, and then I'm going to do isopropyl. So remember, this is iso. I'll even keep this on camera so you can kind of see that. Everybody see that? Good. Okay. We're going to do a side-by-side comparison as to what happens, what if you don't. So the first one we're going to do is blending solution. So if I want to use pearl on my background, I can take blending solution and I'm going to place some down. Again, just a puddle. And you can do many colors of pearls. You can do all of those things. But I'm going to drip the pearl. So see what the pearl did as soon as I dripped it. What did it do? It just became beautiful and fluid. And this is going to allow me to kind of move it. Now, you also saw that those drips, those little dots where I put it, at first it kind of stained the paper, but as I moved it around, you can see that that color completely dispersed. And those were just 2 drops of pearls. Could I add another one? Sure, you could add, really, you can add as many drips as you want. But see, keep in mind that that blending solution is what's going to make that pearl do its thing. And you could add more blending solution. You can do all sorts of things. At this point, could you add isopropyl? Could you go in and do the splattering and all of that stuff? Yes, because I've already put it down with blending solution, okay? But let's say you weren't buying this. You're like, forget it, it's not happening. I bought the pearls and they're junk because they don't work. They get all mucky and they get all chunky because this is what I use. I use isopropyl. Well, that's good on you, but you're never going to get it to do what it's designed to do. And to me, you miss out on the beauty of this because it is a beautiful, beautiful product. I'm just going to take some isopropyl, do the same little puddle. I'm going to take my pearl and I'm going to drip it down. So the first thing you notice is that it didn't do what this did. It didn't flow and move, did it? No, it just kind of sat there. So now I'm just going to move this around. Oh no. What's going on? What is this product? This is defective. I hate this. This is junk. They use bad stuff. And I'm really being sarcastic, but that's because I've read every email, every comment from someone that just absolutely rips me apart. What sort of designer would put his name on such a horrible product and use inferior pigments? And I've heard it all. And the reality is you're using it wrong. Now you may like that look. Sometimes you want a chunky monkey look, and that's okay. That does give you a chunky monkey look and it will dry like that. But it doesn't dry the way it's designed to be, because nowhere does it say blend with isopropyl alcohol. It says blend with blending solution. So that's really the difference, that if you want to use pearls, you do need to use blending solution, and it will be magic. It will be your best friend. It will do so many cool things if you just take a chance and watch and see how it works, instead of, oh, but I use this with everything. And that's wonderful. It does work really great with ink, but it doesn't work great with pearl. It can't, because the type of mica that's in here is different. And it just, you can see it doesn't like isopropyl. It's like, it gets together and it's really just, it's a hot, hot mess. So I think that's what's important. So let's do some backgrounds with pearls. And I'll introduce some ink. I'll even splatter with a little isopropyl, but you won't see me pouring isopropyl down with pearls because, well, that's what ultimately will happen. Like I said, you may like that. You may be like, hey, this is kind of cool. So I'm not judging that. I just think that when people start talking about the quality of a product because they're using it incorrectly, that's not on me. Okay, let's take another piece of Yupo, and I'll get into black as well. So we'll just do that. We'll do some Durabright just with some pearls. Okay, so we're going to do some shakety shakes. We're also going to use some inks, because you can use pearls with inks. Start with some blending solution. I'm going to get that going. So we're going to put some blending solution down. Again, I'm just kind of squeezing that on there. Let's take some drips. See, I mean, you could just tell right away, right? I mean, you saw the difference of how, like, this pearl just is like, oh, I love, just like, you know, swimming in the pool, compared to when you put it into isopropyl. It's like, oh, what am I doing here? I don't want to move. Okay, let's just move this around just to start, just to kind of get that going. If I want to add some ink, so maybe I want some yellow, I don't have a yellow pearl, could I use yellow ink? Absolutely. And will that pearl kind of mix in with that ink? A little bit. It absolutely will, like especially right here. We'll get it to mix. But now if I want to just keep going, I'm just going to keep going with even more blending solution, just because I want to add some more color. And I'm going to go into some blue. There we go. That's the thing where it's like shakety shake. Oh, the other thing I just saw, I should warn you, these get a little crusty on the edge. So there's a little crust nugget right there. There you go. Don't open them over your work, otherwise that crust nugget could become part of your work. You know, maybe that's what you want. See, like you'll see when I hold it up, it's just part of it. Again, I want to move that little blending solution. Oh, there we go. Let's move that. Let's get that pink going too. There we go. And I love that little bit of yellow that's just in there. Isn't that pretty? Just moving that around. All right. If I want to move some of this over, I can put a little bit of blending solution there. I'll put a little bit more blue there. Boop. There we go. Touch that. Oh, that was almost a Kathy Z boop. I heard it. I do like that sound effect. All right. Move that. There we go. Just to kind of, you know, sometimes I like to go off the edge, but it just depends on how it works. Like if it's just a break, like that little explosion is cool. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so this is our background. You can see like that yellow in there, but you're gonna see like, so the shiny is still wet, and that pearly is, well, that's the pearl. And we can just see our background. So do I wanna, if I wanna splatter, if I wanna do all those things, could I now do that with isopropyl? Yes, because we don't wanna splatter or spray blending solution. You just don't, because again, it's resin. So I think I'll just take my sprayer. I'm just gonna go from a distance and just add some little, ooh, that's good. See, did you see what it just did? See those little drips right there? Here, I'll try, I'll hold it here and I'll even be higher up, and then I'll just end up spraying my camera with isopropyl. But it'll keep it clean, but maybe you can watch it. Let's see. Oh my gosh, this is tricky. There we go. Do you guys see that down on the bottom? Now I'm gonna try to hit the blue area. There we go. Ooh, look at that. I have a fan on me as well. That's not helping. Oh, there we go. Look at that. So see, just that little spray of isopropyl, it didn't curdle, because that's what I always think it does. It didn't curdle the pearls because the pearls were already blended. And now we can just let it dry, or I can just dry it with the hairdryer that I already unplugged. So let me hold this up in front of a fan. There we go. That'll take just a second.
You want to plug back in?
No, I'm good. That's because I plugged in the shaker. There you go. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? And just that, the pearlescence of this is just, it's a beautiful look. So you can use just pearls with blending solution, or you can mix it in with your inks. They are designed to go together. Just remember that if you're doing the movement, the application of it, that needs to be done with blending solution. If you're doing the effect, the splattering, the whatever, you can use ISO for that, okay? So hopefully that helped, you know, share a little light on that, some love on the pearls. Do love them. Okay, let's do a little bit of white mixative on black, because that's also really cool. If I could find it. Let's see, where did I put it? I don't know. Maybe it's in here. There we go. Let's use a little white. Shakety shake. Now another thing is sometimes when you're shaking this up, the mixing balls sometimes can get stuck inside the little nozzle. So if you're shaking forever and you're like, I swear there is no mixing ball, there is no mixing ball, there is no mixing ball. There you go. All right. Let's see. Question. Will blending solution on top of the ISO pink side make it mix? Blending solution on the top of this side, will it make it mix? It will make it mix, but it will never break down these chunks again. But yes, if you put blending solution on top of this, you can get it to blend, but your chunks will remain chunks unless you use so much blending solution that you're like dissolving it. But by then, you're just using a ton of stuff. So that's it. All right. So now we're going to talk about like how we work on other surfaces, and we can work with pearls on this, or we can work with snow cap and ink, because pearls, well, they contain a pigment, so they'll work on this. And you can use pearl with or without snow cap. So let's just talk about darker surfaces. I think I'll play with a little Splendor, a little Celestial. Let's just go in with cools. I'm feeling the cool. We're going to do Villainous. We're going to do Celestial. These are all pearls. We'll do a little Tranquil. That will be nice. Just do some blues and purples. And then we'll do a little bit of pink, but I think I'm going to do a light pink because that was Intrigue. I'm going to do Enchanted. Okay. So pearls all have their own name because to me they have a feel, right? They're really, really cool. We'll snow cap light and alcohol ink. Yeah, you'll see that in a minute, Kathy. It's white, so it's going to turn everything into a pastel. It's like adding white paint to red paint. Will it lighten the red? Yes, because you're adding white, so it'll turn pink. There we go. Cool. Okay. Oh, thanks, Tina. I'm glad it solved the pearl problem. And that's really it. It's just because, you know, if you've only seen about pearls from someone, say on YouTube, that hated it because they did it wrong, then there you go. There's like, oop, I don't like them. And I wouldn't blame you if you saw that. Okay. So we're going to start with pearls just on black, just so you can see. So I'm going to go in with some blending solution. Just put some of this on. And again, this surface, this is Durabright. It seems odd that it's called Durabright because it's black, but it is. Ooh, look at the pearl in there. Does the dance. We're going to do pearls with and without snow cap, just so you can see the difference. Because the pearl is still a translucent ink with a color pearl. So if you only use pearl on black, which is why I'm demoing, you don't get all the magic, okay? You really just get, I guess, the magic of pearl, and maybe that's all you're going for. You know, maybe you are going for something that's a bit more wispy, kind of, I don't know, magical. They still show up. Like it's going to dry and it will show up. But then I'm going to show pearls with Mixative. Also do Mixative with the colors. So don't think this is all about pearls. Okay. There we go. So now we're going to take Mixative as well as our pearls. The thing about pearls, though, I'll be honest, because you have to shake them every time, like it's the one thing you got to put the caps on every time, because you just forget one time and you do a little shakety shake and it is a hot mess. Okay. So again, this is also plastic. So you can't tear it, it's plastic. So it looks like paper and feels like paper, but it's still plastic. All right, we're going to take some blending solution. Then I need to take Mixative. I need to kind of start with my foundation of white. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do like white. Now wherever I do a dot of white, that's where I want to do a dot of my color. So think of it, or you could do a couple dots, but think of it as like your base for your color, because now those two are going to mix a little bit. Okay? So wherever you have white is where you need to put color, because that's what's going to give it a totally different, move this out of the way, a totally different vibe. And this is where it just starts kind of playing. Now, once I get some movement going, I'm going to go back in with more color. I'm just going to go back in with more pearls because the dance has already started. So now you can get things going. And we can mix, you know, we can throw a color over there, but I was just trying to kind of be fair like the other one. And a little goes a long way. And this is where you're going to see like a lot of alcohol ink artists, people that are really creating art, they will often pre-mix, because you see those little white dots on the paper when I drip the snow cap. Like that's what I'm trying to get blended out. And it goes so deep that it's almost like the deeper you go, the more white that comes. So if you plan on doing like a flowy background, you can take a little plastic cup and you can take blending solution, a little bit of snow cap, a little bit of pearls, mix it, and then pour it on. So you can, if you want that flowy look and you already know where you're going, go for it. But you can also, you know, still try to blend it out, just adding some blending solution over there. And that's always going to just get things to just flow a little bit different. So see, we can still manipulate that. You don't have to live with it, but it is challenging. I'm going to admit, it is challenging to kind of work with it that way. But let's just compare the two. That was the whole purpose of working with pearls. A little bit more forgiving with inks and Mixative, because I don't have to worry about only sticking with blending solution. All right, let me put these caps on real quick with the pearls, and I'll hold these two up. Okay. So here's the difference using alcohol pearls with and without white. So if you just use the pearls, where there's a concentration of that pigment, it will read more of that color. But as the color, like in pink, gets moved, it just becomes more pearly, sparkly. Here, if you use white Mixative, that becomes kind of your base, your white pigment, anything you put on will kind of maintain its integrity, and you get the best of both worlds. So you get that, and this is still wet, but you get the best of both worlds when it comes to working with that. Can we use isopropyl over this now? Well, because we have blending solution, you can. Isopropyl will work a little different though. I'll show you what it does. It tends to almost act like a bulldozer. It kind of tends to move stuff around a little bit, but let's just say we want to go in kind of right here with some isopropyl, okay? and just kind of move this around. Because the pearl is already kind of stuck down with blending solution, we can do that. But can you see how the ISO is just kind of like pushing everything out of the way? It really makes it, not that it's impossible, it just makes it a bit more challenging to blend, because the pearls still want to like gather up. See how it's like starting to separate right there? So, I mean, it's a trade-off. But this is what I love about the alcohol ink community as well. Alcohol ink artists, man, there's so many cool techniques and workarounds. I mean, it's endless how you can play with this medium. It really is. There's so many different nuances that brilliant people have come up with. So let's go in with a little bit more black, and we'll do some backgrounds. Okay. So for this one, I'm going to work directly on the matte. Just going to pick up some color. So I'm just going to take a little sanitizer because I want to get rid of that blue for right now. Let's get rid of this. Squeaky clean. That's always a good sound. Okay. Because even though it's dry, as soon as I put more solvent on there, it's going to react. Okay. Yeah. It's still really cool. It's a great creamy, dreamy background. Kind of like a little fish. Yeah. All right. So let's work with a lot of different things. We're working with a lot of different ingredients. I'm going to use some mixative. Now, because we're not working with pearls, I can use way more isopropyl because I only need blending solution for that little bit of mixative. So just know that we can do that. So I'm going to take, this is the whole cheat mode, I'm going to take isopropyl, blending solution, then I'm going to take some mixative and some color. So let's go in with a little bit of yonder, some boysenberry. It's like a cooking show. A little bit of teal. Go with a little bit of that. Now on black, it is harder to see where the colors are, but that's all right. I'm okay with it. Hold on, let me wipe this up. There we go. I think I want, let's put a little bit of pool. A little bit more. There we go. And we'll do some Bayou, because, well, why not? Now, on this, because I have a fan blowing, there's like a little bit of resin that kind of cakes over the top. Just wipe it off with a towel. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to start swiping through this. Just going to kind of start seeing what we get. The beauty of this effect is it does create, well, people were talking about like skies and cosmic, and I kind of believe that's what working from a surface does. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I just saw some, it's like a low-cal cooking show. Yeah. Just going to shake some more ink on there, a little bit more isopropyl. You need to keep this wet if you're going to lift it off of your mat. Ooh. All right. Look at that. That's so cool. All right. I'm happy with that one. I'm going to could I keep working with this? Yes. As long as you keep it wet, it will keep reacting. And again, you can use isopropyl or you can use blending solution, whichever one. Could we put it over white? Yeah, you could put it over white, but it's going to be more of a creamy pastel version, which is also great because, you know, sometimes you're working on a background and you may not want the vibrant tones. You want them a little bit more subdued. White mixative will do that same thing. It'll give you that subdued background, that finish if you want. So we could do all sorts of stuff to this. Here we're going to drip some stuff on, a little ISO, we'll drip some inks, a little cosmopolitan in there. Let's introduce some pink. Let's just kind of move this around. This is going to give us a whole different effect. Let's say you're just mixing ink and you're like, I don't really like it. So many different ways to just control the ink. You just move it. You still may hate it, but you're just playing. But see how just like that drag all of a sudden just gives it a different movement? See that little skippity bit? So you might be like, oh, I hate the blobs. Great. Drag it across glass. That's just going to give you a totally different movement to it. If you learn nothing else in this demo, it's the fact that you do not need to have a plan. Clearly, I do not. You just get what you get and you don't throw a fit and you'll enjoy it. Here, I'm going to take a little splatter brush. We're going to splatter because I want just like some bigger cosmic stars than misting. I love that little splatter. Look at that. Beautiful sky. Again, perfect for like think of like a silhouette, a black die cut flower or a stamped image, or maybe you're going to cut it in half for different backgrounds, but you can see And that was cleanup. That was totally cleanup when it comes into it. Splatter on black. We'll do that a little bit more. That kind of got a little overspray. Let's just see what we get on this one. Do you have any? The other thing to know about alcohol, it evaporates. So you need to kind of, oh, there we go. That's a good one. Look at this. You talk about a galaxy. Ooh, that's nice. That's creamy dreamy. So like a 2-for-1, really. You know, working and then just doing a cleanup. Different surfaces, different finish. Okay. We'll move this, we'll move this. Okay, let's get into, I need to get into some other backgrounds in lift ink. Okay, that was good for color play. I could keep going. My gosh, you can see how if you just let yourself play, I mean, we're over 2 hours in this, but you just keep going. So, okay, just gonna clean that up. Let's talk about other things you can do. Because like, what can you do with these backgrounds? We already talked about stamping a little bit, doing some stencils, but there's some really crazy cool things we can do. Before I get into textures, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite things, which is called lift ink. And this was discovered years ago when I was on the Carol Duvall show. I remember it well. It was a long time ago. It was first discovered when I was doing alcohol inks I was doing it on dominoes, and I was doing it on microscope slide glass called memory glass. Ranger used to have it called memory glass, but it was microscope slide glass. So back in the day, in stampers, we stamped on everything. So it was dominoes and glass, and I remember going on to do this on Carol Duvall. So archival ink is kind of your ink of choice when it comes to stamping, and when you stamp it, it's permanent. But there's something in archival that if for whatever reason you didn't like it, it would also take it away. So I'll show you what I mean by that. Let me just take something, well, I'll just take an image. I'm trying to find something that's a bit airy. Oh, that'll work. This'll work. Yeah. Let's do deconstructed. I could do deconstructed. I could do hodgepodge. I could do all sorts of things. I'm just going to take a little stamp just so you can see what I mean. And I won't use this background. I'll use something else. Again, it doesn't really, the background does not matter, but for the purpose of this demo, this will be a sacrificial background. So see, now all of a sudden, everything I hated is like, ooh, but I don't want to ruin it. See, the sign of a true maker. You step away and all of a sudden, everything that was even your scrap, you're like, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You would be right. Okay, so let's just say you wanted to stamp on this. I'm going to take, this is Distress Black Soot Archival. You could try any archival. Ranger makes a bazillion colors of archival ink. This is an oil-based permanent waterproof ink. And if I wanted to stamp on my Yupo background, I can. Now, if you want it to be darker, like those trees, you would use black embossing powder, because you can also emboss on Yupo. You just have to kind of keep your distance. But putting black embossing powder over it, yes, you can emboss on archival. You just have to be quick. But embossing is what's going to give you that really deep, saturated image. So that's embossed. That's also embossed. It just really pops, because as you can see, even though it stamps, it kind of becomes one with the background. But what I discovered is that I stamped when I was getting ready for something, and I'm like, oh, I don't really like it. So I took a cloth. At that time, it wasn't even a paper towel, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get rid of this. I hope I can save it, because I knew archival wasn't going to dry right away, okay? I'm like, okay, if I can just get rid of this. And when I did, I'm like, what just happened? Something in archival removes the alcohol ink. It leaves behind the gray, or whatever color you stamped in. If you stamped in red or blue or whatever, it leaves behind the color, because this is still a dye ink. But something in it while it's wet, only while it's wet. Once it dries, it is permanent, people. Like, you can't wipe it off once it dries. But it was a discovery, and I remember that. Obviously I didn't like that discovery when I first did it, because it was very embarrassing. But it stuck with me. And years later, when we were talking about alcohol ink stuff, I said to the chemist at Ranger, I'm like, do you think you could ever create an archival ink without any color? And he's like, what? Like an embossing ink? I'm like, no. Like archival ink, but with no ink color. Just whatever the base is, whatever the goo is.
And he thought you were crazy.
And he's like, you're not making any sense. And I go, it doesn't matter if I'm making sense. Can you? Like, is the ink what keeps it alive in the ink pad? He's like, no, that's just the colorant. I'm like, excellent. And we introduced Lift Ink. So Lift Ink, well, same as archival because essentially it's archival ink without, well, any ink. It's the same felt pad. It's got the same re-inker. But this becomes magical ink because it does this trick without leaving behind any stain. Any stain. So here's what makes Lift Ink so amazing when you do backgrounds. It was cool. I remember he's like, what? Are you?
Good to see his face.
Yeah. It's like, you're not making any sense. Okay. So when you do Lift Ink, you can do a lot of different kind of stamps. But my favorite is something with open areas because it's going to be more dramatic. You'll see in a minute. Versus something, well, solid. You could lift a solid image, but it's not as dramatic because you don't get the ins and outs of the color. You'll see in a second exactly what I mean. So we're going to use the new floristry for this. Now your stamp should be clean. It should be totally clean if you want your Lift Ink pad to stay clean, because if you have ink residue and you use your ink pad, it will re-wet that ink. Even though this is like dry ink, it will reactivate it. So what do you clean it with? Well, any stamp cleaner, whatever you would normally clean. It could be archival cleaner or whatever. Just keep that in mind. So I'm going to take this. Oh my word. Holtz, you got so much stuff everywhere. You are a hot mess. Okay. Just going to bring in a stamp tool. See, it's going to be like bowling over here in a second because all those ink bottles are going to knock over even though I'm not using them anymore. But that's okay. I don't want to waste time putting caps on. Okay, just going to take this. Where's that cool background that I threw over here that I was? Ooh, see, that's a cool background. That's the whole thing. Okay, where was that bluey? Oh boy, here it is. This one, yeah. It could be anything. Ooh, maybe I'll even do the rainbow one. Oh, I think, you know what? I loved this one. This was the cleanup. Isn't that cool? But I'll stick to this one. That was my initial plan. All right. I'm just going to take a background. This is one we did earlier. Remember, we talked that it could be a stormy sky. It could be anything. And I'm going to look at my stamp and I'm going to decide where do I want to put my stamp. That's what I love about floristry. There's no right or wrong. But I'm going to have that go like, I'm just going to say like in here. That's what I want. So I have a piece of media grip in my platform. That's what's going to keep my paper in place so I don't need to use the magnets. And I'm just going to position that stamp there. Okay. Now, I made sure we have this, that it's on the rubber side, rubber for rubber. So, okay. So next I'm going to, am I still on camera? Yes. I'm going to ink this up using Lift Ink. Tap, tap, tap. Gets a little noisy, but you want to tap, tappity tap. Like, and I'm not inking the whole thing because I'm only stamping this side. So, but you want to get ink on there. And tappity tap is how you use the Lift Ink. It's not a rubby swipe. Tappity tap. Okay, good. Perfect. Then what we're going to do, ooh, that's a clean mat, is we're going to stamp the image with Lift Ink. So I'm going to stamp with purpose. That means just press down, or if you have one of those little air hockey pucks, you can use that as well. And we're going to stamp with the ink, and we're going to open it up, and nothing happened. Because you, as the maker, have to do the heavy lifting. The ink is working, but you need to do the lifting. So I am a huge fan of Viva paper towels. Maybe you don't have them everywhere, but this is a different kind of paper towel. I have it in the roll. It's for special purposes only, like lift. It's only what it's for. Because these are scratchy. So I prefer this because it's almost like a paper cloth. Could you use a cloth? Yes. But what you want is, we want something porous. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to lift the ink. So I'm just going to start dabbing over where I stamped, and you'll see that a little bit of ink comes off. I'm going to turn over. I'm going to dab, and it's almost like this picture will develop right before your eyes, kind of like a Polaroid. And we're just going to keep dabbing. Each time I'm dabbing, I'm just getting a different part of the paper towel. I'm not rubbing at this point. If you rub it right from the go, then what you're going to do is you're going to end up smearing your image. So you need to blot it first. And I do that until I don't really see any color. I don't see any more color coming off. Then I'm just going to go in and give it its final little polish, if you will. And just like that, we have lifted an image from the ink. So we've created that beautiful lift or resist with this ink. But now we see all the true color. So instead of this having a black undertone like it would with archival, we see the blue undertone from yonder. We see that little chronicle and that little bit of bayou, that smudge coming in. I mean, it's glorious. And this could be cut down. Again, that could be a card, that could be a card. This image, like it's done, and we have a beautiful effect with lift ink, okay? But that's not it. We lifted the ink off of it. It didn't eat it, it lifted it. So the ink itself is actually hanging out on this stamp. So what we're going to do is we're going to transfer it. And this is where alcohol ink cardstock comes into play. Because you might be like, well, then why didn't you just get rid of that cardstock? Because this cardstock is, in my opinion, the best for your second stamping of lift ink. Because glossy cardstock is glossy, but it is clay coated. And because it's clay coated, it is very, very grippy. It wants to grab on. If you've seen any other demos I've done when I talk about alcohol ink cardstock glossy, it's one of the most porous papers you could have. So now I'm going to take that same stamp. I haven't done anything to it, and I'm going to stamp it onto the glossy side of the glossy paper. Again, stamp with purpose. I get that this is bigger than this piece of paper, but you'll see exactly what happens when it happens. So pressing, lift, and this is what you get. All of that alcohol ink color that lifted off of this background stayed on that stamp, and it will stay there because there is, if you're like, well, why didn't it dry? Well, because the ink was already dry when we lifted it, right? We lifted dry ink. So the barrier between the stamp and the ink was this stuff, which is kind of oily. It feels really oily. So when we inked up that stamp with lift ink and we stamped it down and we lifted this up, there was like rubber stamp, lift ink, dried alcohol ink, and it just kind of sat on that wet surface, keeping it wet. And then when we stamped it onto the glossy paper, the grip of that glossy paper kind of pulled it off like a fruit roll-up. So that's why sometimes when people do the second stamping, they're like, oh, it didn't really work well for me. Well, if you just try it on white cardstock, it's okay, but something grippy like glossy paper is just beautiful. Now, this is permanent. We stamped in alcohol ink, so that means you can go in and you can use markers, pencils, you could watercolor on glossy, and this image is permanent because it was stamped in alcohol ink. Crazy, right? So cool. Do you have to do the second stamping? No, its intention was to lift. But one of its added features is the fact that you could clean off the stamp and be done, but you could get that second stamping on alcohol ink cardstock, on a good clay-coated glossy cardstock. And I love that, because you're like, well, you know what, I could actually ink my stamp with my distress pads or any other ink pad, and you would be right. You absolutely could. But it's just something about the unpredictability of how an alcohol ink background flows, and you get that absolute mirrored perfection. The dark with the dark, the light with the light. Isn't that cool? Fun. All right. So that's lift ink and a stamp. But there's a re-inker in play, and usually in the day, re-inkers are pretty much, well, for re-inking. But you know, as a stamper, we have a lot of different techniques for re-inking, a lot of different ones. So let's do that. Let's talk about what we can do with lift ink, re-inker. So I'm going to take a background. Ooh, I think this one's cool. Let's use this one. It's kind of celestial. It has some pearl in it. One thing to keep in mind, that lift ink is really designed to lift inks. And so if you try to lift through an alloy or a mixative or too much pearl, you may have to stamp it a couple times. So that's why it is good to use a stamping tool, because you can stamp, and then if that happens, you do have to clean off your stamp, reapply the lift ink, and do it again. But that's one thing. Ooh, I do like this one. Ooh, I really like this one. I'm going to go with this one. Jeez. Because these I just think are so good as they are that I really hate to do anything to them. All right, we're going to do this. So we're going to go something from deconstructed. We're going to take like this cool circly image. I don't need that arrow. We'll take the circly one. I'm going to slap that down on a block. I'm going to do something a little bit more collagey, so I'm not super particular as far as having to stamp this more than once. Okay, I'm going to take my lift ink. Tap, tap, tap. Okay, we know the drill already. I'm going to go in, I'm going to stamp in this area. So we're going to stamp with purpose. Great. Lift. Now, could you stamp again? Yes. I'm not going to this time. Take my same little towel. We're going to start just lifting. And like I said, this background I'm going for kind of mixed media collage. You'll see what I mean. So I'm just lifting, going to a new spot. The reason you want to go to a new spot is because you are picking up ink. And if you keep going with the same spot, the ink that's on that paper towel will transfer to the clean areas. And maybe you don't want that. Okay, that's good. Kind of wipe that off. Okay, so here's what we have so far. You may not see it from there, but see that cool lifted effect? Yeah, and you could do it again. You can do other things. But the reason I only wanted to do something kind of small and minor is because we're going to take some stencils and we're going to use the Lift Ink re-inker. So I think for this, oh gosh, I think I'll do maybe a little honeycomb through that. I could do big florals. Maybe I'll do some little dots or bigger dots. I could use little tiny dots, but I'll use bigger. I'll use those too. Yeah, good enough? Okie doke. We're going to take some Lift Ink re-inker. I'm going to apply some right to the glass. You could put it on a palette, put it on whatever, but you only need a little bit, like squeeze, like just a drip, really. And for this one, I'm actually going to go in with a tiny blending tool. If you don't have a tiny blending tool, you could use a regular blending tool, but you need foam for this. You can't use it with the felt that we use to apply the ink because we're trying to get through the stencil. You'll see what I mean in a second. So I'm just going to take the stencil and I'm going to lift some pattern. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to dip it into that ink, and I'm going to kind of work it into the foam. I love a tiny blending tool because it's tiny and it's great to get into stencils. But my drip is over here. I'm just kind of working it in. You can feel it's kind of oily because you don't want too much for this one. Now I'm just going to pounce. So I'm not going to rub through the stencil. I'm just going to pounce. Maybe I'll go down here a little bit. That's it. You can tell it's working because the ink is going to be on your foam. All right. Then I'm just going to pick this up, but my hands are sticky, so I know that that's going to lift off. You can kind of see it doing something a little bit because I went over it several times. That's where the tool started doing the lifting. But now I'll take that paper towel. And this one, you really want to use a clean part of your paper towel because we're lifting off a lot of surface area. We're lifting off right through that stencil. It's not just a stamped image. But it's so cool to use with stencils because now we can get a completely different effect. And depending on how many passes, that's why I was pretty random in this, that's going to determine if it lifts a lot or it fades out and it lifts even more. Isn't that cool? With a stencil. My gosh. Then we can take this one as well. I'm going to go right back in. I'm going to use the same tool on the same background. I will say that, you can reuse these foams, but you're going to have to kind of stick into this color palette. Like if you did this over pink, you would transfer this green muck. So, you can either just trash the foam, use it for something else, or just kind of sort them by color. So here I'm just going to just do a few little dots there and a couple little dots down there. Not a lot, not a ton. A little goes a long way. Remember, we're just creating a background pattern. So first we dab. Break the habit. If you've used Lift Ink and the first thing you want to do is just start rubbing it on there, don't, because that's what creates a smudgy mess. We're just going to dab. You have to get that ink off. And I always just look at the paper towel. You can see how much ink is really coming off, but you can get a lot with the precious Viva. All right. Then once it's done, I still like to go in, dab. There you go. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. Question, is it a little sticky when you use Lift Ink? It is not sticky, it's oily. Could you use foil at that point to create the veins? Yeah, Lift Ink is not sticky. Lift Ink is very oily. So like in other words, if you never dabbed off the Lift Ink like I showed you, it would never dry on there. So some people, when they've used Lift Ink before, they've stamped or stenciled and did nothing. So they didn't do the paper towel. They were just, I don't know, they were waiting for it to maybe magically lift. I'm not sure. But then you come back to it like a week later and you touch it and it's like, oh, it's still wet and oily, because this will never dry because it's that oily thing. But not just a great combo. So we've got the little detail in the back. We've got this, and then I would still stamp on this background. Maybe. Or you might just pop it in a frame because it's a work of art. But you could still like stamp a sentiment, put a die cut, could do whatever. That could absolutely work. So yeah, really, really cool. Isn't that great? Good question. What do you use to clean the stencils with after lifting? I clean the stencils with the same thing I clean all of the alcohol with, which is sanitizer. So you can just use a little hand sanitizer. You can put it on a baby wipe. This is not a water cleanup medium. So you could just, if you want to keep your stencils clean, a little sanitizer going on both sides, and that will take off any alcohol ink remnants from your stencil. Yeah, easy. Fun. So that is the magic of lift ink and re-inkers. Okay, so this next part, I'm just going to talk through this next part. We'll have to probably do another demo at another time. I've demoed some of this stuff, but man, I just have so much fun playing when it comes to the alcohol inks. But let me just talk about this other thing to kind of get you to explore ideas and maybe go and watch those other videos. So sometimes you want to create an effect that uses a stamp, but maybe you want the reverse, the opposite of lift ink. Okay, because remember when we lifted that one, I don't even know where it went. Look at me, what a hot mess. Oh, there we go. Remember when we lifted this? So when we lifted this, remember, the design is the outline and the color remained on the inside. This, well, this is kind of the opposite. My inside is lighter, but my image is darker. How do we achieve the reverse? The reverse is done by inking a background, stamping an image in embossing ink. So that would be, this is like different ways to create a resist on your background. So I stamped in clear embossing ink. Any clear embossing ink would work. Clear embossing powder covered the image. So this was already an inked background. Heat set it, so use an embossing gun. So when you use an embossing gun on Yupo, you can see it's got a little bit of a bend, but it's not scorched, and that's because you pick it up. That's where you want to use these little guys, these little grippers, because you want to make sure that when you're embossing Yupo and you're using an embossing gun, that the heat can pass through it. If you emboss it on the table, it's going to look like lasagna. It'll ripple in an instant. So using a heat tool through the Yupo, you'll see that the Yupo kind of floats, and when it starts to move, oh, that's too hot, move to another area, oh, that's too hot. You can move back and you can ultimately emboss an area, okay? Then, when you're done embossing, I only did this one halfway this morning. I'm going to finish it live on camera. Then what you're going to do is after it's done and it's embossed, we're going to remove the image. This is where we create the resist, okay? So by doing that, I'm going to get a splat box. You can use anything, doesn't really matter. But you want something you can spray into. Is that showing up on camera? Yeah, kind of blocking my light, but you're all right. So you can see what this is now. I'm going to just stand that up. Because I need my image to stand up, I need gravity for this one. You need gravity. Sprayer of just alcohol. And I'm going to start spraying my background. So I already started the process, but now I'm just going to do it again. Just going to do more, and I'm really going to focus on kind of this bottom area. Okay, and you're going to let gravity do its work. What's happening is the alcohol is re-wetting my background, and it's starting to drip down, but wherever that embossing is over the inked background, that ink is trapped underneath the embossing. So that will never change color, but everything that's not embossed is open game to lifting away. So see this corner? Watch what happens when I wipe this off. See how it just became lighter, and it traps that color underneath. So, and you can spray this with ISO as many layers as you want. Obviously, the more you spray, the lighter your color becomes and the darker your image becomes. And then you're going to let this dry. This does feel very sticky during the drying process, like the embossing powder, everything, but trust me, it'll dry totally smooth. I love that. So I could keep spraying this. So if I went into that dark area and I wanted to spray like more of that dark off with ISO, you'll see in a second. You can keep spraying that and you're going to get that color to start to pour off of the background. Interesting, isn't it? So this idea, okay, this idea can be translated many different ways as far as trapping color underneath. Another way you can trap color is using resist spray. So these are done with resist spray, and I've demoed these, where you lay down a stencil over an inked background, you spray resist spray through a stencil, that's the shiny part, and it traps the color. Look at that floral, beautiful. Let it dry, and then you stand it up, you go in with your ISO alcohol, you spray it, and you just let that background drip away. So obviously, the more exposed background, the more you have to blend. The thicker your image is, the more intense that finish is. But resist is kind of like almost orange peel. Can you see that? Because it's a spray, it's very liquid, so your image becomes just kind of orange peel, but still very smooth. So embossing, resist spray, cool. But then there's a new texture in town, pretty recent, that works like a dream. And that would be Distress Texture Paste Translucent. This stuff, although it looks like yogurt, is like thick, glossy accents, if you will. You can spread it on. So you can put it on with a palette knife through a stencil, and then it creates not only a shiny resist, but very textural. Magic. So this one and this one, this is where I was like, ooh, I was getting all over myself. It's like, oh, I did a little lift ink here, and then I'm going to do a little textured resist here, so it trapped the resist under there. But then where there was no honeycomb, when I sprayed my solvent, it started to kind of erode it away. So if you spray the whole background, bye-bye resist, because it's just gone. But see, even where it trapped that resist under there, I'm like, ooh, that's cool. But see how cool this stuff is? So I'm just gonna, it won't dry in time for the live, because this is, depending on where you live, this is gonna be a good maybe 15 to 30 minutes to dry. But you'll see what I mean in this, how you apply it. So let's just take this background. Let's take, well gosh, I'm gonna take a totally different background. Let's do one of these new ones. Let's do like these spots. That'll be fun. But it could be anything. I mean, it could be something beautiful and floral. It could be anything you want. But we're going to take the translucent paste. We're going to take our palette knife, which I've got somewhere. There it is. If you guys could only see the mess surrounding me. I do not clean when I'm in the zone, but I'm a very clean maker when I'm not. So it's what I remember. I told you it's like, kind of like yogurt. And all your texture paste, it's a good idea to either use press and seal. I'm trying a new trick. I don't want to say that what I'm doing until I know that it works, but I'm trying to find like a press and seal workaround, but hasn't been long enough to give you the official results yet. But now I'm just going to take this and I'm going to spread it through my stencil. So I don't need to tape this down or anything. I like it to be a bit more random. You can go in different directions, but the rule of thumb is you kind of want to be able to recognize your stencil before you do the dismount. Don't go over it too many times either, because you kind of want some of that texture. And then we're just going to lift this off. This just goes right into water. This will rinse off while it's wet. So I just have a little container of water that I put that stencil in. And this is what it will look like when you apply the paste. It will go on white, but trust me, it will dry completely clear. So let this dry, but see what I mean about the texture? Like, I love that the dots and everything will have a little bit more dimension. Does it mean you can't do this with resist spray? No, you can. Can you put embossing ink and embossing powder through a stamp? Yes, you can. It just depends on, do you want it to be stamped? Do you want it to be kind of speckly like resist spray, or do you want it to be textured? Your choice. But I just thought that the effect of that, wow, it's just so cool how intense. I mean, it traps the color exactly how that background is, and you need to wait for that to dry before you spray it. But once it dries, you've got that shine, and then you can spray it. So like this one, we could spray more. You can keep going until you have lighter colors. Alcohol will always react with itself. So even if I took, again, if I splash this, so move some backgrounds out, and I just went in and just started spraying ISO, see, knowing what we know, see that effect? Just spraying it with a bottle. Just go over that little area. I mean, gosh, you could just lose yourself in this. Look at that. Ooh, that cool texture. Whoa. I love it. So many things. I mean, possibilities, you guys, are endless. I can't encourage you enough to just give yourself permission to play. Lose yourself in the play. Because all the things that we've done in this short amount of 3-hour time, see, time flies when you're having fun. Like whether we're doing lift ink, we've got some cool lift ink backgrounds. I mean, we've got these colorful beauties. We've got stuff from texture, whether you're doing dark or light, even sometimes, the muckiness, the cleanup that maybe you don't think that you're going to want to do, or working with alcohol pearls. I mean, possibilities are truly endless. And I'll clean all this up, but it is the magic of alcohol. Like, oh my gosh, see, I'm not even done. I looked at my watch. I have 10 minutes. I'm going to clear the deck because you need to see something magical. If you're still with me, thank you guys. But okay.
You need
No, I just,
Do something?
no, I'm good. I'm just going to move. I normally like to finish with a beauty shot, but hey, creativity is boss in this world. And it's like when my creative brain is like, nope, you're going to do this now. Guess what, guys? I'm going to do it now. Okay.
That's how you roll.
There is something to be said about a couple of colors in the Ranger line that are just wild. All of these have their own unique freak. Okay, they do. But these colors, Pitch Black and Mushroom, are like, I don't know. They just do wild, wild things. So let's just start with Pitch Black. I'm going to use some ISO. We're going to take Pitch Black and we're going to put some drips of Pitch Black. Now, Pitch Black is a thick ink. It is a thick alcohol ink, but it has so many crazy tones. And this is not a favorite of everyone's. I mean, really, there again, you go into that community and some people like, oh my God, it's my favorite color ever. And it was like, it's the worst stuff in the planet. Because instead of us starting with just a black ink, which we could have, which other brands do, it was a combination of so many different colors to get black. So the nuances, the undertones that you start getting from this is crazy. And I'm just going to keep going with it. I'm just going to keep adding. I'm just adding isopropyl. You could do the same with blending solution. Blending solution also creates a little bit of that craziness. Not as much as ISO, but I'm just going to keep going. So I'm not using any more ink. Just continue to add isopropyl. Again, this is Pitch Black. And every layer, it like reveals a whole nother personality of this ink. Where just when you think you have it understood, it's like, no, you don't. You don't know me. Look at that. Okay. I honestly, I could keep going on this one background for like another 10 minutes, but I'm not going to. Just going to show you. Just going to give it some time to sit with itself. And then I'll show you what it does. So this one, I'm going to leave some of that black where it is, but I just want you to see like what it's already doing. What in the heck? It's like an oil slick at some points. It has unbelievable nuances to this color with just black and isopropyl. And you can keep going, and there's people that really have had different formulas where they're like, I do 3 drops of this, or I let it dry and then I go back and add this. It will keep changing. So this is the one where I added ISO, remember, like that second or third time. So every time you add more isopropyl, it's like another color reveals. Like once you get gray, and then 2 or 3 times you start getting warm beige, and then 3 or 4 you get blues and purples and pinks. It's nuts. It's absolutely crazy. So this one I'm just going to set here and I'm going to splatter it. It's still on camera? Yeah, it is. Okay. Get back to my little dish. Put in, I don't even know where, oh, I was going to say, I don't even know where my little bottle went. I was going for the big guns right out of the gate. All right, we're just going to splatter this because we can. Because it's still drying, so I want it to take on some of this splat as it's, oh gosh, ridiculous. So just, I mean, we're wrapping up like 3 hours of fun. You could sit down with a like Pitch Black alcohol ink, some Yupo and isopropyl and have a nice day, because the things that you can just achieve with this one color. And then we're going to do Mushroom, because Mushroom is very much the same as far as its uniqueness and what it blends out to be. Okay, we're going to just let that dry for a second. Now I'm going to do the same to Mushroom. So Mushroom, another fan favorite, also has just ridiculous, crazy undertones to it. Not sure all the things that are in it, but it is a beautiful thing. Okay, let's just take that, do a couple of drips. Start moving it around. So Mushroom just goes as Mushroom. I'm just going to add a couple more. Because it's a great color to kind of play with and morph and let it do its thing. All right, because I still want some darkness. Okay, now this one I'm just playing. Just using the air blower because I want to keep, so see how I'm like keeping that dark. I'm not letting it feather out. You're in control of that. So just little bursts of air. I'm also creating those little lines. You can manipulate this. You really can. Over here, I'm just going to add a little bit more ISO just so we have, you know, that kind of second layer effect, very much like what black did. All right. And then this one, I'm just going to give it a little mist. Mist from the back, mist from the sky. Woo! And we're going to dry those in there. Again, just using this little burst. You see that? I'm never checking blood pressure. Just little tiny burst of that. Okay. That's mushroom. One color creates the most beautiful, and if you didn't want that darkness, you wouldn't go back the second time. Remember when I added mushroom because I wanted that dark space? But mushroom is that thing that you can create the most beautiful skies. You would never think that like that's the color of like a sunset where you get blue and red and orange and pink. What? You just wouldn't think that. It's nuts. And this one, I mean, trust me, when we did big bottles, oh heck yeah. Like this thing, this is my most used because it has this unpredictable effect. But some people don't like the unpredictability. You know, they want, you know, a color that's a little bit more consistent, that when they introduce it to their artwork, it stays. Well, totally different results when you add isopropyl to some dark colors. I mean, pitch black is cool, don't get me wrong. I love the pinks and purples and all that, but mushroom has my heart because of the browns and all that. So there we go. I had to share that. I couldn't get that out of my head. There's other things that I'd like to talk about, but hey, there's another time, another demo. Good fun with alcohol ink.